protagonist felt a strange burning in his stomach, like a knife driven right into its center. Remembering that a burglar had stabbed him, his final thought was that he was truly going to die this way. He never had a chance to achieve anything. This included not finishing the marathon he had been training for, and just as he was about to graduate, his life was taken. The well he had then reached its peak, and somehow his desire for reincarnation was confirmed. He gained a jack-of-all-trades skill set, but mastered none. Once again, he felt he was getting something quite useless. Opening his eyes again, he found himself in a completely unfamiliar place and could not make sense of his situation. Remembering a conversation with a sort of friend during a visit to a manga-reading bookstore. His friend had come to buy isekai cheap manga that everyone was talking about. Asaji strongly disliked that because it made no sense in the current situation. The other guy took it so seriously that he now believed he could be hit by a truck and reincarnated in another world. He remembered being stabbed in the belly a moment earlier. Searching, he realized that since it was gone, he might have been sent to another world. Looking around, he realized there were no buildings like there had been before. The world felt like a classic RPG, and he followed a river he found to reach a city. Shaken by the last flashback, he remembered a skill that had been embedded in him before he was sent to this place. Still lost in thought, he felt a presence behind him. When he turned, he saw a small creature peering at him through its axe. Remember the creature's features. It has green skin and a short body. Seeing it was a goblin, he realized he was too late because the creature had already attacked him. He knew he would need a weapon to have a fair fight with it on foot. After deciding to run for a while, he realized. Somehow the goblin couldn't keep up with him, so he found a good opportunity. He chose the perfect stick, and as soon as he had it, he took a cutter from his pocket to make a pointed tip and realized it was quite easy. He was unexpectedly better than he had imagined. Still happy about it, the goblin tried to attack him again. This time he barely got out of the way by an inch. Startled, he got back to his feet. Looking at the goblin's back, he decided being a warrior might not be a good choice, but he reminded himself that for now he was nothing. Stepping forward, he stopped the monster from behind. He took it down in one hit. It was the first time he had killed anything. He realized he had no choice earlier, since otherwise he might have been killed in a different situation, and though he felt terrible, he was ready to accept the guilt. Destiny had other plans, and from the bank he heard several girls coming out of the forest. He realized this was not just a lone goblin, and soon understood that by taking one of their own, a whole horde might come to take him down. Having no choice, he ran as fast as he could to escape. The moment he acted, the monsters could not match his speed. Asaji ran until he could shake them off. As he ran, he realized he had already broken the high school record, but right then he was pretty hungry. When he turned, he saw a wolf drinking from the river. As usual, when he saw a monster, he identified it by its features. Annoyed by his stare, the wolf attacked him at once, as usual. Using the pointed stick, he killed the monster with a single strike. Having killed the wolf, he cut the body into edible parts and luckily knew how to do it. Even while eating, he found the food dry, but his survival skill finally let him feed himself. Once his stomach was full, he felt a little relieved, but it was clear things were not easy. Having taken a single monster once again, he left the entire horde behind. Again, he decided to run as fast as he could to avoid causing himself much trouble. That was very different from the goblin, because the walls moved quickly. Running as fast as he could, he soon found a way through the opening. Emerging from the forest, he saw an entire city spread out before him. Picking up speed, he saw the wolves falling behind. Somehow he finally made it through the gate. He saw it as a great achievement, but just as he was about to go inside, a guard stopped him immediately, asked his name, and Asaji introduced himself as John. The soldier questioned why he was rushing into the city so fast. He said wolves were chasing him. After confirming the man really meant wolves, Asaji told him it was not one wolf, but a whole horde following him all the way. The soldier suggested he fight with them, as usual, because running was hard. The next question concerned the bloodstain on his body and how he got it. After achieving this feat, Asaji felt like a murderer. And while he was doing it, people gathered to hear Asaji's story. They couldn't believe a human who seemed so weak could outrun wolves, so they nicknamed him Black Rabbit. The soldiers thought his kind of strength made him seem incapable of killing anything. Despite trying to make it clear he had taken down monster, they still called him Black Rabbit. Their faces showed they would not accept what Asaji offered and that they felt some pity. A soldier stepped forward and laid a hand on his shoulder. He decided to find a good place for him to stay and offered him the chance to join the Adventurer Guild to get some easy work. After quietly thanking him, he entered the hotel. The caretaker greeted him and led him to the room in the left-hand corner. Once inside, he stretched to shake off his fatigue and fell. He felt deeply grateful to everyone who had helped him so far. Wasting no time, he went to check on the Adventure Guild. As soon as he arrived, the receptionist was, as usual, very helpful. One of the guys recognized him as Black Rabbit and was glad he finally decided to join the guild. Being from another world and seeing this as a game, he decided to get identification so it would not be a concern later. They asked him for a drop of blood to get his status card, so he pricked his finger and touched it to a small triangular metal card. They asked the receptionist again if he had any magic, and she said he did not. However, she told him he was pretty fast. Asagi already knew this from the way he ran away from the monsters in the forest. Additionally, it was revealed that he had a rare skill. It turned heads inside the Adventurers Guild, who wondered what it could be. Asagi was also glad that a transfer to another world might be worthwhile. Later, when the woman revealed she was a jack of all trades, he showed no joy as everything was taken down. No one in the guild would accept that this useless thing was a unique skill. The earlier adventurer tried to comfort him, saying it was all right. He recalled making a spear out of, collect wood and start a fire to cook food. He never admitted it was all because he was a jack of all trades. Leaving his demotivation behind, he decided to accept whatever came his way. Accepting it with both hands, he resolved to become stronger from then on. Asagi took on quest after quest, gathering herbs and defeating small monsters, and leveled up every day. He submitted all the quest requirements to the guild, received his rewards, and had his status card updated. All the receptionists were impressed by his good work, knowing that this guy was growing incredibly fast. It felt like a game he was going along with, and now he was thinking of throwing a party, which might be a much better idea. Asagi had never expected to end up in this situation, and it felt like a hallucination. Meanwhile, he tried to find his reality and gave himself the choice of being an MMO player or an RPG NPC. He did not know why he had been brought into this world. He had many questions about why this was happening and where the story might lead him. While John was deep in thought, not paying attention, he accidentally bumped into a woman who was walking forward. Then apologized for it. He looked at her face and saw it covered by a mask with a large eye in the center. That felt pretty intimidating. While apologizing to her, he tried to figure out what the giant eye meant. A long, awkward silence followed, broken by the lid's stomach growling with hunger. Asagi immediately suggested they both go to a stall for dinner, saying he was already going to buy it. The woman decided to apologize while denying it. Asagi wasn't listening and immediately bought 2 meals from the stall. They went to the park to sit and spend time, and while Asagi looked for a good spot, the woman kept denying that a stranger was serving her. At first, Asagi planned to hand her the food and go home, but he thought staying would be more fun, so when they found a bench they sat down. Asagi could tell from her face that the girl was staring at the plate of noodles like her life depended on it, so he handed it to her without waiting, knowing her hunger could consume her and he wouldn't leave a woman behind. Asagi preferred eating with others to eating alone. Still, one thing kept bothering him. What exactly was the mask the woman wore over her eye? He thought about asking her to take it off, and the same thing happened when she tried to get her food. The woman simply took off that mask, and the moment she did, her face was the prettiest thing, with small red cheeks that showed she was embarrassed after taking food from a stranger. The beauty moved Asagi deeply. Never expecting an NPC like that in an RPG, he believed she had a very beautiful face under the mask. Unfazed, Asagi kept eating his noodles with. He watched her with an exaggerated stare. At that moment, the woman was enjoying it. A virgin like him even approved the way she ate her food. It struck him as more than just cute. While he kept staring at her face, it felt embarrassing when she realized they hadn't had time to introduce themselves, and Asagi felt the same. There, the woman was introduced as Daniella. After delivering the introduction, the woman fell silent again. Asagi seemed unable to hold a conversation even if he wanted to. Even in his previous life, he had never learned how to talk to a girl. This explained why he had no girlfriend in his previous life, even though having one was common in his generation. Knowing he couldn't hold a conversation again, he decided to walk away from. On the spot, he told her he was going back to the hotel as an explanation. As he left, he thought about how much she had enjoyed the delicious food. Her plate was empty. She was only thinking about buying more food. She returned to the shop to get it and handed him a few coins. Excited to enjoy 2 bowls, she hadn't been in town long, but her happiness was short-lived. A group was coming from the front, which did not look promising. They were somewhat creepy adventurers who liked to bother and cause trouble for young women. Danielle had no interest in getting involved in something like that. Her hands were full of noodles, and she wanted them more than anything. It turned out those bastards had no intention of doing that. They surged forward and knocked the meal from the woman's hands right in front of her. The noodles she bought for joy fell to the floor. Her stance made it clear she intended to take on all the adventurers at once, even as they tried to warn her away from her miserable life. When told it really meant nothing, Daniella had already had enough. Seeing someone waste food in front of her, she stepped into the fight. Asagi heard the scream as he walked to his hotel. This reminded him of the woman's voice and made him wonder if something was wrong with her. Not knowing what the situation might be, he decided to run immediately to the location and find out what caused all of it the moment he reached. He discovered 3 people trying to take over that liddy while one in the back identified him as the Black Rabbit. He chose to act. There he found another adventurer from the guild and asked about the situation and how it had happened. Asagi did not intend to get involved in anything that could lead to serious trouble. The man's shoulders revealed they were much better trained and stronger than he was. Even as a boy, he wanted to protect the woman he fell in love with at first sight. Realizing he had to act, he considered how to keep her safe. Just as he reached for his sword, he paused because he had no idea how to proceed from there. John decided to get more information and quietly asked the nearest adventurer about it. They then learned that all 4 had been childhood friends, but suddenly those 3 changed and decided to become adventurers together. All 4 often went on quests together, and the man was about to tell the whole story when Asagi cut in, asked if he knew what was happening with the women, and dismissed it as nothing, saying the 3 of them always played along with strangers, so Lee was the next target. They tried to come closer, but she pushed them away. There was no reason for them to get involved with a woman like her, so he went inside to help and asked the man to help him deal with them. Since they were mistaken at that moment, Asagi insisted he was ready to go in and get the lady out quickly, planning to distract them so Daniella could run to the soldier. He stepped in during their fight and told the man it was a real waste to throw the noodles on the floor. Daniella never expected him to come back to help her. While the adventurers talked with him, he did his best to distract them. Meanwhile, he turned and whispered to the woman that she should get out of there immediately and run to the city gates to tell the guards what was happening there. Daniella couldn't understand why the man was trying to take her place in the fight. This wasn't the time for that, so Asagi told her to follow orders. After a few seconds of awkward silence, the woman sprinted away at once, and when the adventurers noticed she was trying to get away, they told her she couldn't because she was the hero right then. Asagi stepped forward and announced he would be the one they were going to fight, which stunned them. They hadn't expected such bold words from him, so Asagi, full of himself, drew his sword and pointed it at their necks. While he tried to act cool, those guys were not ready for what was coming up front. Asagi drove the sword into the ground, spotted an opening, noticed they were off guard, kicked up sand from the floor and threw it into their eyes. No one could tolerate sand in their eyes, so they rolled on the floor trying to protect them. They cursed the boy for using that concealed technique. Asagi did not treat it as a matter of pride. He was glad he had saved the woman and decided to leave. Announcing he would leave them to fend for themselves, John acted like he'd really beaten those guys in a decent fight. Again, he sprinted to catch up with the lady. At the main gate, he found her already in the middle, telling the soldier the full story when the information was finally revealed. Asagi accepted her thanks, and they both thought the city guards could handle the mess from there. They stayed instead of going back because they had many questions to ask. When Asagi asked whether she had actually arrived or gotten lost, she said she used her magic, which proved very useful. Confused, Asagi wanted more clarification and remained stunned that the woman could use magic. A soldier at the gate heard their conversation and asked them both to come inside to answer the earlier questions. As soon as they went inside, they were put behind bars, and Asagi was not prepared because he believed he should be seen as the victim while the others shouted. A soldier came over and explained that all the waiting rooms were full, and because they were worried about those men's safety, they could not let them go out since adventurers might return for them, so they kept them occupied in a cell, and after fully understanding the situation, Asaji calmed down a bit. Still, living in a prison for his own safety didn't exactly thrill him, but he tried to understand why there was only one bad thing about occupying it. Asaji shivered at the thought of spending the night alone in the same bed with a woman this beautiful. Curled into a small chair nearby, he thought he could rest. The night would be painful for him and his body. Although Asaji couldn't rest at all, the mere thought of being this close to a girl at night overwhelmed him. That night he realized if the lady could use magic, then magic likely existed in this world, and this was just an RPG game. He still thought it looked as if none of them had left. Asaji decided to ask her how she first learned magic. She said it depended on his magical aptitude, that he might or might not have it, and decided to check because it was easy to do. Asaji accepted the offer. She asked him to step closer, raise his hand, and focus, imagining magic flowing through his body. Asaj tried to focus as much as he could, then relaxed a little. An unwavering presence surrounded him, making him feel like the flow of a great river. A color had already started as a clear flow running through his body, while Danielle tried to understand what at her. He had it and made clear that it was fire. She said there was a small red and blue light at the center of his core. After a while, Asaji felt a burning sensation in the center of his body. His body began to freeze, and it seemed his aptitude had completely changed. She said that because Asaji wasn't concentrating much, he leaked a lot of magic, which caused a clash between fire and ice, and it was sad to remember that night. Far better than sitting alone with a woman in the morning. When the soldier arrived, he immediately asked whether the man had done anything wrong or caused any trouble at midnight, but she refused to answer. After fighting all night, the soldiers told them they had finally chased the adventurers, leaving everyone exhausted, and when they realized the soldiers were after those adventurers, they made a mistake and were captured. And on top of that, they had to hire some guild adventurers, including a friend, which exposed major secrets. Helping ensure the plan was carried out correctly, Asaj remembered the boy from last time who had stood aside while the fight with Daniella grew heated. At the soldiers' office, everything had been completed on their end. Now they were ready to be released from prison and head out. Asaji thanked Russell for the help he'd provided, and then confirmed that the man was looking for a hotel. He suggested going to a place far better than anything else. They both went to the same hotel, and Daniella now wants to stay there too. The place was fairly cozy and a bit cramped. Things were getting far more bizarre than Asagi had ever expected, since he was now going to live under the same roof with the lady. A notice on the board said no one was allowed to call him Black Rabbit, and that felt like a dream come true for him. The next morning, while they sat at the breakfast table eating, Daniella still hadn't fully woken from her last rest and was unaware of her condition, falling face first into the food and leaving Asaji to reconsider his choice. She suddenly asked him to form a party with her, and he was surprised. Regarding Asaji's clarity about the party, he thought it included a mage, a priest, and a knight, and he liked the setup. He still couldn't understand why she had asked him to help form a party, so she explained that even though he saw himself as weak. Knowing he learned quickly, she asked him. Stepping away from the others, she told him another reason was that what happened the day before and how he handled it showed he was more than just reliable. Asajin misunderstood what she was trying to say, believing she meant she would take care of him and that this was the final reason. She made clear they intended to work together and believed nothing more would be required of them. Even so, Asaji glowed at the statement. She said that if she could choose who to invite to a party, he would be first and no one else. They agreed that if joining forces would benefit them both, they should form a party. They then decided to visit the Adventurer Guild. On their way, Asaji noticed the woman really stood out from everything else. John felt relieved the Black Rabbit teasing had finally ended, but worried the woman might give him another awkward name. Looking at the quest board, they picked a quest that fit their abilities. Daniella thought they should pick something heavy so they could test themselves. On one quest, they found it listed as a subjugation request, and accepted it immediately to return to the forest. Asaji remembered it right away, since he had been there when he first came from another life. They were there to take down some wolves. She explained that this kind of monster always moved in packs, which is why Asaji was chased by more than one on the first day. They were about to start the wolf subjugation quest and drew their weapons. Asaji could not sense any wolf monsters nearby, so he asked the woman about checking and asked again to confirm whether they could detect others, and she said there were no rules about it and that she was curious about the boy's stats. She then asked him to copy her actions to search for it and used the words open status to bring up a screen showing what they were made of. Like Asaji, he was happy that it had finally happened. Magic had started appearing on the status. It seemed he was growing steadily, and the lady was now concerned and curious enough to learn about the jack of all trades skill. Asagi explained it was a skill that let him do anything and told her how he got it, saying that once against goblins he could make a weapon, and when he was hungry he could turn things into a stove, but he could never fully master any of the skills. He noticed a strange network of veins across the woman's body. He told her she might also have a unique skill, and Daniella revealed it right away. It was a kind known to affect the races that lived in the forest or on the plains. This skill let her see the wind's movement and even its spirits. Asagi now felt quite jealous that he didn't have the skill himself. She explained that as a light elf, her people mostly came from the plains, but her village was currently hidden in the forest. While he talked about and considered the other races, it seemed some wolves had finally arrived. Sensing the presence, the elf immediately warned him to stay on guard. Now it was time for them to complete the quest. She fired her bow to draw in more enemies. She took down one of the monsters. Completely surrounded by many of them at once, they faced not a pack but a full horde. They both stood their ground as the monsters tried to attack. They began slicing them off like vegetables, making the job easy. They praised each other for being good at their parts. After a while, when they finished, the subjugation was complete. They decided to lie on the floor to find relief. Completely drained, they weren't sure they could handle anything more, or if they should just go home. As evening fell, they intended to go back. At that moment, they sensed a strange presence through the screen. I couldn't tell what it actually was. Both Asadi and the woman were confused. As soon as he turned around, he realized something was wrong. He wasn't going to spend any more time on it and went back home. When they reached the city, the receptionist gave them a large sum as a reward for their quest, and the woman was shocked because she had not expected so much. She was thinking of using it to buy a whole food stall, and Asagi was ready to propose a partnership. In addition to dinner, they planned to use the remaining funds to upgrade their equipment, and after that, Asagi had saved enough for the upgrades. Suddenly, Daniella said she wanted to tag along with him. Her plan was to buy some camping gear so they could do quests together for a long time. He had trouble accepting that a pretty girl like her was so interested in a gloomy guy like him. They had not decided to go camping for training. She thought it would be important if they planned to go on quests together. Asadi couldn't make sense of how the day could arrive with so many unsettling thoughts at once. The woman somehow read his thoughts and said she had chosen it at random. Having handled the previous quest easily, they believed they could do much better. She suggested they camp in the forest to train and improve their skills. Believing it would take them about 6 days, 3 to reach the center of the forest and 3 to return. Asagi felt a little nervous about being attacked at night while camping in the forest, but she told him not to worry. They could use some magical tools to create a barrier around the camp, and after thinking about it, she told him that would be enough. Asagi was now ready, knowing they would have proper security. The lady had already agreed, and they decided to gather some supplies before heading home so they'd have plenty for the camp. The next day they left for a camping trip, and for a few days they seemed to be in intense training. On the morning of the camping trip, Asagi woke up in his hotel and realized he had not slept well the night before. A bright, perfect day made it ideal for a trip, and he was overly excited about it. When he went with Danielle yesterday to buy 6 days' worth of food and camping gear, he couldn't stop thinking about how exciting the trip might be because it was his first time camping alone with that girl for 6 days in one tent. Daniella had paid for all the equipment, and he felt less of a man, with no intention of making it up in the forest. Quietly, he moved past the breakfast table. Thinking of her, he began to eat but felt uneasy because he knew she would never skip breakfast under any circumstances. Thinking the lady might have overrest, he went to the gate of her room and knocked. When no one was opening it, he decided to go inside because her gate was not really locked. John saw the lady lying under the blanket. Not worried about the big day ahead, Asadi had not expected this to be the cause. Back in college, he remembered being the same whenever morning approached. His mother would simply come and remove both the blanket and the curtains to let some sunlight in and interrupt his rest. Memories flooded his mind like a flashback, so he decided to do the same. Never had he expected to be doing all this for a woman who was resting calmly, so he stepped out and pulled the curtains from the wall in one motion to let the sunlight in, and then, when he woke her in the morning and pulled back the blanket, he saw something he had never expected. Naked, the woman rested on her bed. After a while, as the bright sun beat down on her, she began to feel a little unsettled. Asagi felt blank, and while the lady searched for her blanket, he could not decide what to do next. She heard the boy's voice and wished him good morning. Somehow she opened her eyes and got up after someone greeted her back. But the moment she stood up, she found that her upper body was uncovered. It was pretty ridiculous, and Asagi stood stumbling while holding the blanket. He was trying again to figure out what to do next. She asked him to leave. He obeyed the order and stood at the main gate, stunned and shaking with fear. All his memories of coming back from his previous life had been erased, and he could remember nothing. Inside, the little elf already had her claws on. She blushed a lot. The thought that someone might have seen her in a compromising position sent chills through her body. She remembered that the night before she had a few drinks and went to bed early. Unconscious, she must have taken off her clothes because she felt very hot. She realized it would not have happened if she had woken up earlier as scheduled, and now she blamed herself. That man had really done nothing wrong. All she could think about was she was fixing the situation, but felt embarrassed about handling it later. They decided to go camping as planned and soon reached the forest entrance. They knew they would spend the next 6 days there. As he asked her to let him finish inside, the woman wasn't listening to anything he said. An awkward silence settled in for a while. Asagi's contemplation broke it. Who was trying to understand why she remained silent throughout this time? He guessed she was angry about something he had done wrong, and thought he was extremely careless. No one should enter a lady's room if it was left unlocked. Thoughts drifted as he pictured how she'd look sleeping the same way while they camped in the forest, but he couldn't ask. The girl, however, didn't say a single word. She was trying to decide what to do. Since that morning, she couldn't act normally around John, and she behaved like a child even though he tried to lighten the mood as much as he could. A sudden, embarrassing realization hit her. She wondered if the man had considered that this was her usual way of resting before bed. It was even harder for her to accept, but there was nothing she could do. As it began to get dark, after deciding to set up the camp, Sagi did it neatly. He placed a magical barrier. Outside, it shaped like a tool that emitted light. Everything was ready because the barrier's interior was protected by magic. Asagi then asked her to teach him more about the Sen skill, since that was the only reason they had set up camp, remembering the day they had spent. He told her that the woman had taught him many things during their walk through the forest, and thanks to her, he now saw the world differently. Asagi planned to learn more skills and then looked at her. He suddenly realized that it was only. He felt lucky because this woman helped him get through it all. When he first came to this world, he knew very little about surviving. He realized he could have survived on his own by now if he'd wanted, but as an adventurer, he still needed help and company, and thanks to the Black Rabbit incident and reaching out to others, things had not become so difficult. Meeting Daniella changed everything because it felt like fate. He now believed it had all been fate. The woman had been a major presence in his thoughts, both good and bad. Daniella was completely silent and did not say a single word, knowing that a lot of time had already passed between them. She thanked him in return, knowing he had always been kind to her. He offered her a delicious meal after she embarrassed herself in front of others, then came to help as soon as he heard her scream while the adventurers were tormenting her. She believed he had always been a good person, ready to help and offer comfort whenever needed. Everything in her head changed after that morning when he saw her lying naked on the bed, and she worried he would think she was strange. At night, after everything had settled, they decided to finish dinner, and Asagi used his skills to light the fire so they could eat. Both of them seemed to be playing a mental game. Asagi began again, remembering everything the lady had done for him that day. Although his unique skill had driven his rapid growth, he believed he owed it all to her, so this time he spoke aloud to thank her. He told her that every day had become something new, and he was looking forward to it. Daniella did not react at all. Her face was flushed, and he again thought it was because he had seen her naked that morning. At last she brought up the subject, and decided to ask whether he had been thinking about what really happened at the inn. Finally, his delighted face showed he was truly perverted by his own choice. When he realized the woman did not feel safe around him, he moved away to rest elsewhere. As he passed, the lady froze in place, clearly surprised. It hit her that she had said those things because she was caught off guard when the man came over to thank her. She kept telling herself that what happened this morning wasn't intentional, and putting everything else aside. Believing he had done more for her than she had for him by teaching her his skills, she felt embarrassed when the boy suddenly said she was the one who had changed everything, and she wondered how he was. Assessing the situation, he saw that Asadi had already climbed to the top of the tree to rest. She could not have been more embarrassed and took all the blame on herself. She chose not to call him down and returned to rest in the tent. That morning it showed the man had tied himself to the tree so he would not fall while resting. Waking up and looking at the fire, he saw the lady still resting. Afraid the previous day's incident might happen again, he decided not to wake her this time. In the morning, he went out of his way to boil some stew. He kept the leftover from last night and believed it was a good thing both in his previous life and now. The lady did not wake up even after a long time had passed. Saji decided he should go inside and wake her. Although he feared the previous day's incident might happen again, he decided not to go inside and instead went out to get ready. After waking, the woman stepped out of the tent. Her first glance went to the boy, but he was not there. Turning around, she found that he had prepared some stew for her from the leftovers, using a bowl and spoon. That was generous and she enjoyed it. She felt pleased that he had taken the trouble to clean the dishes and place them on a towel so they would not collect dust, which showed he was thoughtful. Enjoying the warm soup, she was reminded of John again. At that moment, she felt something moving toward her. The sight was overwhelming. Asagi approached from the front, and this time he carried a deer over his shoulder in the bright light. They greeted each other with a pleasant good morning. Asagi saw she had finished her breakfast and dropped the deer to the ground. He clarified that he had already drained all the blood so they could remove the gut and have their feast. He was skinning something and needed help while he was at it. Daniella came up from behind, embarrassed and hesitating before she spoke. Then talk about the last day that came unexpectedly. Asagi had not expected this, and it may have caught him off guard. The woman bowed to him, apologized for being wrong, and explained the misunderstanding she'd gone through. They were now just trading apologies. It had become routine for them. He told her it was his fault for entering the room without permission because he hadn't considered that possibility. He offered a gentle apology, saying it wasn't intentional. Realizing the boy was misreading the situation, she pointed at him and CL. She said it happened because she'd been drinking before she went to bed. Gathering her courage, Daniella explained that the alcohol made her feel warm, so she took off all her clothes, and it was one of the rare times she was left naked. Asagi's mind was clear, and he felt much more relieved. There was no need for him to keep resting on the tree, and the woman, once again at fault, apologized for pushing him and said it was not necessary. She clarified she wanted to clear it just last night, but when she tried, it was already late because he was resting. Asagi felt a little relieved that everything had been clarified and they had moved past the misunderstanding. Both decided to stop worrying about the past and return to normal. With everything finally settled between them, they started preparing the food as noon approached. Asagi prepared some meatballs and grilled them on 2 skewers. It looked quite delicious to the lady. The women took their first bite and were truly delighted by the taste. I was thinking about what it really turned out to be. It was unclear if Asagi himself had hunted the deer, but one thing was certain. She had never experienced anything like this in her entire life. The woman was overwhelmed by its texture and bite, and it released rich juices. Delicate, tender deer meat was no match for the wolf's hunger. Remembering, she tried to recall how it ended because she felt the woman had defeated the monster on her own. After one bite, she was completely won over and said it tasted much better than wolf meat, so they decided to smoke the rest and bring it back as a gift for the hotel's caretaker. Finally, when they got to the topic, she asked how he had actually managed to take down the deer. Asagi held up a freshly whittled wooden bow and told her he wanted to use something like it, saying he had made it out of nowhere. With the sensing skills she taught him, he located one such deer in the forest. Then they immediately created that bow out of nowhere. He took it down in a single strike, and she was impressed by his jack-of-all-trades skills, which were very useful. Not even a Saudi had expected it to work this way. Once everything was settled, they climbed up, went wolf hunting, and did more training. That day, they ventured deeper into the forest. As planned, they set up camp first and then went out to hunt. After they were done with the creatures, they removed the fangs to sell at the guild for money. The forest then saw a much larger drop in those monsters, which helped him. Danielle had told him that monsters reproduce quickly where magic is concentrated, and that finally eased his mind. It felt like a wolf-killing festival, and the more they hunted, the more experience they gained. Again that night, they prepared food from the deer. They cooked the meat, enjoyed the meals, and Daniella was impressed. The boys' cooking skills were far better than anything else. Reviewing the experience, Asagi realized that it was one of the most enduring and exciting camps he ever experienced. On their third night in the forest, Asagi checked his status screen. He discovered he had gained the detection skill. That was pretty good. Now the woman felt prouder of him because he had worked hard to achieve it. John was glad he had put in the extra effort to achieve this feat because ever since meeting Daniella in this world had been a blast, and his current life couldn't be compared to the old one, leaving him overwhelmingly happy. The happiness didn't last long. The little elf immediately sensed a presence, just as he was about to look for his dinner knife. Standing up, the woman knocked over all the food and shocked Asadi even more. About to run, she told him to do the same. When the man asked for clarification, he could feel something behind him. She warned it was a Beowulf, and they had to leave immediately because they couldn't catch it. When Asagi saw Daniella's expression, realizing they were in danger, he knew that if the creature came at them, it could take them down. A massive beast radiated a crushing pressure, as if the Grim Reaper stared down, ready to hunt them. The instant he felt it, he understood. Even though the woman had years of experience, this sent chills through her body. The only right thing to do was to escape immediately at top speed. Those monsters were in a hurry. They tried to stop those guys from moving through small packs of monsters. Even though the party managed to slice some of them, they thought escaping would be tedious. Daniella told him the big monster's plan was to separate them. Asagi resolved to focus on survival, whatever it cost them. They decided to investigate, knowing they couldn't have fought off so many while being chased by a high-level monster, so their only choice was to hide and wait for it to end. They could see a shelter at the end of that part of the forest, so they both ran toward it while the other monsters tried to attack them from behind. Eventually, they were completely exhausted and reached a gate. Out in the middle of the forest, they felt they had somehow shaken off all the wolves and grew curious about the building ahead and the elf looking at it. It was clarified that this was an ancient ruin not thought to be there. She explained that her ancestors once lived in cities like these with a different architectural style, but most races had already been eradicated, and while all groups once lived together, the elves are now divided by skin, color, and other traits. In short, the woman was unsure whether the building actually housed all those groups under one roof, because it happened long ago, and she thought no one would be there. Daniella knew that after they became extinct, only branches remained and people formed their own tribes, yet they all shared the same blood. There they decided to visit their ancestors, smiling together. Their interest in it was obvious. Entering the room, the elf could not believe how perfectly intact it was, and she told them so. Although the ancient elves had been extinct for 1,000 years, their sub-civilization still lived there, and she concluded that magic might be keeping the place clean. It was possible because, as the saying goes, ancient elves used advanced magic, and Asagi realized the place was running on its own like a machine. He realized that although the place looked ordinary from the outside, it could be full of magical technology inside. At that moment, she sensed the awkward presence again, and he told Asadi that the monster they'd been running from had found them, and stood at the main gate of the ruin. Finding a hole, Asadi decided to go through it because both of them could. At first the monster couldn't, then they could plan what to do next. He praised the thinking and then he told her they could use magic to make a hole beneath it and attack from above while it struggled, and Asagi planned to use his water magic to fill the hole once the creature was nearly submerged so they could freeze it solid. The plan was solid, but the real concern was whether Asagi could use ice magic. Though a bit nervous, he believed now was the right time to take this opportunity. Finally, he asked the woman to leave if anything happened. He believed she had to be the one to keep living. She refused to hear that from the boy, who was pretending to be calm while offering his life for her cause. She told him they would survive together and carry on with more quests ahead. Blushing at those words, she still asked him not to just act cool. He was acting like a fool, and there was no way only one of them would make it out. John suggested acting as bait at the front to draw out the monster. She could strike from a safe distance, and his plan was that only a surprise attack could drive the monster into a corner where they could take it down. Although she refused to let him do it, he ran off without listening to a single word. They now stepped forward to stand in front of that monster. It marked the start of the battle. Acting like a hero, he roared in front of that monster and challenged it to a fight. He didn't know what awaited him in the end. A monster crashed through the wall and made an opening. They weren't attacking him, just throwing pebbles that pushed him against the wall. Blood was coming from his mouth. Severely injured, Asagi had blood dripping down his back. He was confused by the monster's presence. Realizing it was hard to breathe in air thick with sand and blood, He felt pain in his throat and thought of using wind to blow the dust away so he could get more oxygen. Before he could decide, the monster had already made an opening and entered the ruins. Seeing Asagi on his knees made him feel like he was nothing but words to the monster. Mr. now stepped ahead of him amid a loud commotion, his body covered in magical mana. An invisible current flowed through its body the moment it moved forward. It fell into the pit they had created earlier, suddenly activating and about to fall through. Seeing he had made a bad choice, they both decided to act as planned. Asagi returned to his focus and concentration and continued. They began casting ice over the monster, like water pouring from a dam. The harder he pulled, the more he moved out. Pleased, he saw that any water he poured on the monster turned red. Now he believed they could win this battle, but he worried how long he could hold out. Knowing waiting would only make things worse for him, he called Daniella, who drew her bow and looked for an opening. Then hit it quickly with several blows. A steady stream of arrows struck the monster from every angle. Injuries to both its eyes and its body inflicted more suffering on the wolf than anything it had done, which did not match. As it screamed in pain, it looked. It seemed they had finally used a move that worked on it. After a while with no movement, they began to wonder if it was really dead. When the battle finally ended, Asagi was completely exhausted. He also took a direct hit from the monster and was injured immediately. Nothing made sense to him about how it had happened. Despite being unable to breathe, he felt lightheaded and his ears weren't working. Only Daniella calling his name could be heard. He opened his eyes and saw the wolf talking to him, impressed that he could pull off such a move after being human. Asagi understood every word that came through. I aimed at the monster's heart because it felt somewhat piercing. The wolf was furious that he was fooling around and trying to kill it. Now he was ready to send him to his own place of death without waiting more than a second. Enraged, the wolf clawed his gut again. Daniella didn't like it, so she notched an arrow and ordered the wolf to let it go. Offended, the wolf warned the woman that if she used the attack, he would certainly take the man down. A terrible situation forced the woman to choose between a friend and a monster. The wolf said he didn't know what they were expecting, but the number of monsters they'd taken down was impressive. Humiliated, Asagi asked him to take his life if he wanted to. It was unexpected for a woman like her to hear this when they had just made a pact together. Looking back on the situation, I had a flashback to Saudi Arabia. Daniella had helped him reach his current position, and he saw saving her life as repayment for whatever she had done. The wolf read the man's face and knew the man meant every word. His resolve was stronger than anything. He repeated that the wolf could do whatever it wanted with him, but only asked that the lady be released. The wolf was impressed by that guide's resolve because he could not sense any life in the eyes of the human who spoke with firm resolve, while on the other hand, Daniella couldn't bear that someone was risking his life for her. Asagi closed his eyes, ready to accept his death in this world. He replayed every flashback from this life and his previous one, and before he came here, he worked lonely night shifts, so talking alone with a woman now made everything feel much more special. Even in his previous life, he never had a relationship because of his shifts, but waking up in the morning, spending the day together, and ending with a delicious dinner with her felt exciting. Convinced he would die this way, he had one bitter, ungrateful thought that he had not met her sooner, yet he remained deeply grateful for everything the woman had done for him and waited for the killing blow with a heavy heart. When he opened his eyes, he saw Daniella crying in the corner, tears streaming down her face. Even the wolf backed off, saying he had already changed his mind. It was completely unexpected, so he repeated his statement and warned him that they should not do anything to change his decision. The wolf said he had already changed his ways and decided it would be a waste to kill him. While Asagi was completely confused by the statement. He wasn't expecting this at all. When Asagi finally realized that what the man was saying was true and that he truly had a change of heart, he cursed himself for going through all that embarrassment only to end up with nothing. Furious, the man exploded, screamed for a response, and then suffered a blow he did not expect. The lady came alone to hug him in his arms, tears rolling down her cheeks. The sight delighted the wolf. While being hugged, Asagi realized he couldn't breathe and couldn't speak. Deeply moved by her determination, he felt completely lost in her soft, comforting arms. Still crying, Daniella thought the man was really going to die. He finally decided to run away from her to get a chance to breathe. After things settled, Asagi asked the wolf why he hadn't killed. The wolf said that although the man wasn't stronger than him, he'd never been hurt so badly in his life. He thought it would be a shame to kill him before he reached his full potential. Born in the forest, the wolf was magically transformed into a larger monster, and because he had no memory of it, other creatures tried to claim him as much as possible. From his experience, a wyvern never got close enough to threaten him in a fight, but a simple human could. Asagi thought this was a simple idea anyone could have and knew many people were much stronger than him. Then the wolf asked to continue. He traveled and trained by his side because he hoped the man would meet someone far stronger than himself. Asagi kept asking him for a death wish, and the wolf was ready to grant it. This time Daniella was serious and told him so. In any case, if the wolf even tried that, she planned to make sure she killed him right then. The wolf was shocked and terrified for a moment. Not wanting to face any danger that day, he tried to scare the woman away. The lady was wrapped in her own aura and strength, resolved that she could easily kill this monster. Asagi stopped her immediately as she tried to proceed. He told her he had accepted the wolf's decision not to kill him, so there was no need to bring it up and risk turning a friend into an enemy. It was the last time they faced a big monster. With that, the battle was finally over at that moment. His instincts told him they were saved only by the monster's actions, and though relieved, he felt more exhausted than anything. At that moment, he saw something on the top of the roof. Then he asked the woman to take a look, and they both decided to pay a visit to see if there was any light there. As they moved, they realized it was the same wolf they'd seen earlier, making an opening so they could get through. It seemed the monster was trying to impress them while hiding his ulterior motives. Immediately after this opening was created, they entered a room they had been completely unaware of and could not have found on their own. Weapons of every kind were lined up side by side across the room. When Danielle saw them, she immediately recognized them as ancient elven weapons. They might have been made 1,000 years ago, but he wondered how they could have lasted so long, and the only answer was that advanced magic had preserved their condition. She knew it was called the environment and that it operated on a completely different level than today, especially in causing and preventing deterioration. She said this magic preserved the weapons in their current state for over 1,000 years. When Asagi looked at it, he saw the items were as gorgeous as before. Daniella explained that these weapons were unique. They would not chip in battle, and their materials were prized as artifacts nobles collected for decoration. Because the item was so expensive, most people couldn't afford it, so Asagi thought about selling them to have something for their back. Daniella agreed, but worried the estate's owner would be upset that it had been stolen years earlier and might claim they found it as an adventure reward while exploring. Asagi realized that if those nobles needed it, they would certainly buy it. Many weapons were set aside, and Asagi looked at them. They expected the lady could carry all of them. When she lifted one of the bows, it felt much heavier than a normal one. She simply couldn't carry it all. They wondered what the right decision was, and Asagi asked her to come along with her old weapon, not wanting to force her because he planned to change his own. He planned to fight with a different set of artifacts, so he grabbed one, but the wolf behind him made it clear that would not happen. Wolf didn't want to involve his own kind or fight among them, since they'd already taken down many of his friends, and he added that the forest was divided into two parts. One was handled by the goblins, the other by the wolves, and the goblins might try to move in on their north side. Asagi realized that if they took down most of the wolves, goblins might move in and take over the forest too. From Wolf's tone, it became clear the big monster was thinking of starting a battle with those monsters, and Wolf confirmed the magic he had released would move to the southern side. The goblins would likely move back to the northern forest. This means that if blood was shed between them, they would change domains. At the moment, Asagi held most of the weapons, including the sword and spear, while the lady carried only a dagger. Many things had happened in the forest that month, but this was their final day and their last time camping. At that point, they decided to head home. Wolf stopped and said he'd remembered something. He wanted to give him something unexpectedly. The wolf called him back and said that since the man had really managed to gather all the useful equipment and treasures in the forest, he planned to teach him a skill called enchanting lift, which left Asagi confused. Wolf made clear he should be grateful to be getting another chance to fight once he reached that power level. Immediately it growled and moved into the dark forest. It somehow gave Asagi some kind of power he could feel in the sparkle. He felt he had learned a new skill that appears out of nowhere. The skill was called the Forest Wolf's Legs, and the wolf walked away, disappearing after promising to meet him later in life. Walking back out of the forest, they found it was a pure miracle that their lives were saved. Danielle didn't look very happy. She admitted she was a bit upset. She wanted to practice saying it even more. She looked like she was thinking, but she wasn't. Without further discussion, they headed back to camp because she was already hungry. Returning while the food was being prepared, Daniella opened up about her past and Asagi has a mysterious past. She told the whole story, taking us back about 70 years. Her tone made it sound like she had been there before, and Asagi now doubted how old she really was. That was a rude question to ask a woman, and as usual she didn't like it. His curiosity made sense, so she said she was about 200 years old, which shocked him. The woman told him to let it go, but no one expected a girl that young to be sitting opposite a man who was only 21. She said the monsters brutally massacred her entire tribe in what she called a dragon stampede. Monster stampedes were rare and dragon stampedes even rarer. One hit them. It took an army to kill a single adult dragon, so they had no chance and everyone in her tribe, including her parents, was killed. Asagi was shocked that a woman like her had witnessed such a slaughter right before her eyes. All she could recall were flashbacks of her parents screaming for help, including the entire home, before she could figure out any way out. It and her parents were wiped out by a single strike from a dragon's claw. Blood splashed across her face. Covered in her parents' blood, she hid in a basement. From then on, her parents' blood masked her scent, so the dragons never found her. Terrified, she refused to leave the basement for about a month, and although it had been a living hell, she now thought she might have left earlier to try to save something. The moment she stepped outside, she saw the village destroyed, and the sight of burned bodies and buildings churned her stomach. Completely overwhelmed, she couldn't stop herself from vomiting because of the smell. Despite everything, she survived and pulled herself out of the family home, but she could not shake the destruction and sadness, and after putting on the gear her parents had given her, she somehow walked among the corpses of her tribe at the moment she spoke those words. A heavy heart made her shed a few tears. Asagi had felt it all along. It's pretty unfair that she has to face it. Her reaction to his offer to switch the equipment made him think it was his fault for bringing up the topic. He gently served her the food for dinner. The moment she smelled it, she felt very relaxed. She believed that the more time she spent with him, the better everything would get, and the nightmares would stop. Even now, she wakes up with tears in her eyes because the memory never leaves her, and she never forgets it. Everything changed the moment she met Asagi, and even though the reason remained unclear, she could not stop thinking about him. It struck him with the memory of the woman hugging him desperately in the ruins, and believed he must have reminded her of how it felt when she lost everything. From then on, determined, Asagi resolved to do everything he could to protect her. They decided to go for a walk the next morning because it was a beautiful morning. As they moved through it, the was smiling and giggling uncontrollably. The place felt wonderful, and they had fallen in love with the forest morning. Their visit proved worthwhile as they learned a lot about the ancient elf ruins and met the wolf, and when they discussed the weapons found there, Asagi asked again whether she truly intended not to use them. The carefree look she gave him as she stretched made it clear she wasn't worried. She looked up at the dark sky and said that, always using the bow and arrow her parents left her, she had no interest in leaving them behind and believed that if she left them out, she would fall gravely ill from a simple denial. Asagi didn't know what the lead was going through when he said that. He just said it, but he usually apologized in case it hurt her feelings. On the other hand, Daniella felt better when the man finally brought it up and talked about it. The woman was using reverse psychology. He tried to cheer her up, but she ended up cheering him. He then asked her whether a human like him could ever use weapons made by elves. He received an affirmative reply, saying his unique skill set him apart from other humans, and that they could use him more effectively than any elf or other race could. Her wording made it sound like Asagi had some kind of cheat skill, but he had none. He had been practicing for his own sake and decided to start from the basics, and they took a good nap there before packing up and heading back to the city. After coming back to the city, they went straight to the Adventurer Guild to submit everything. The items they had collected on your camping trip. At first, they let the guild examine the ancient weapons to assess their capabilities, and during registration, the receptionist took a sample of Daniel's blood to record the magic weapons for safekeeping. It was done using a piece of code. Asagi was the guild member on duty that day, and he found her kind-hearted. She reacted boldly when she first saw him with Daniel. She couldn't accept that he had such a hot girlfriend. He was still thinking about how things had gone back then, when Daniella explained they had earned 4 gold coins because of the claws. The material was also confirmed to be of the highest quality. It was about time, so they decided to go out and spend the rest of the day at the pub, but when she planned to go alone, Yella stopped her. Now they went together to enjoy it. They called it a small welcome home and thank you party. As soon as she got drunk, she lost all control. Even though she looked cuter, it was already over. They enjoyed the feast for about an hour. Once they had everything, they decided to return to the end. But just as Asaj was about to leave, the earlier receptionist stepped in and stopped him instantly. After reminding him of his stupidity, I decided to remove all the information about the weapons. He just revealed they found them by chance during the trip. And at that moment, she asked all those questions. She stood so close to him, it was almost a hug. The receptionist closed in on him. He called him a gem and clarified that he would evaluate him further. From her demeanor, Asadi understood that the woman was quite terrifying and completely astonished. She checked whether the man had really packed all the weapons and fangs in only 3 days, since that would require more than talent. Stuck with the woman, Asadi considered asking for help while she praised him the whole time. In his mind, he asked her to let it go so he could go home and rest. The only help he could expect was from his friend. When he turned around, he realized she was completely lost in him. Drunk, Daniella mumbled that she knew he would be a great adventure someday. Despite the compliment, he dismissed it as just being nice. The lady went on to say what she believed. He would become the strongest of all adventurers. With rumors spreading, he wasn't ready to accept the compliment because it felt like overwhelming attention. On another fine day, Asagi decided to go to the bait, remembering it had been 6 days since he had last taken one. As soon as he entered, he felt his fatigue lift and enjoyed his time inside. Once he got out, he wasn't sure what to do with his day off. Others were there, tired from the previous night, and they discussed wolves finally appearing in the southern part of the forest, which the guard had noticed first. They sensed wolves moving from the north to the south, so they would now have to deal with him as well. Asagi recalled the last meeting with the big monster, when it told him they would migrate south. He didn't realize the action would be so quick. They were the sole cause of the migration, so he took the blame on himself. He went to see the blacksmith as he, arriving to collect the items he had requested, he was first given a steel sword. This looked pretty good, and the blacksmith did too. Taking the opportunity, he checked again whether he had really found weapons in the ancient elven ruins while exploring. It wasn't just him, rumors were spreading across the city. He told them that while they were camping in the forest, the weapons were hidden on the last day in a small room inside the ruins where they found them. He kept them at the guild house for now because the material was valuable and he did not want to carry it around. He left the blacksmith. Looking at the sky, he thought about how to get food for the day because he was hungry. At that moment, he noticed Daniella from earlier, carrying many noodle bowls in her hand. Humming and clearly excited, she carried a dumbbell-like bundle of material. The real question was whether the woman could eat it all herself, and she agreed. Now Asagi had a clear picture of Daniella and realized she was not what she appeared to be. Now he was heading back home. He wanted to test something that had been bothering him, so he tried out his new skill. They were called the forest wolf's legs and were given by the monster. Opening his status screen, he saw that everything was in good shape, including the jack of all trades skill and another called the legs of the forest wolf. That proved to be quite a stretch, and when the skills were displayed, he tried to understand and match each one to a body part, deciding where it fit best. For example, he assigned fire to the magic part, as Daniella did, and so on. Unsure whether the skill was ordinary or unique, he concluded it must be unique because no adventurer in ordinary times encounters such a high-level monster. The skill was unclear. There was no catalog or sense of how it would really work, unlike the jack of all trades, who had a clear picture of every skill it included, such as gliding through the air, moving at great speed, and vaulting differently in the middle. He thought about what and how he could use this skill in combat. Swinging his sword in midair, he could dodge attacks that came out of nowhere. After concluding it and proved his dodging, he found the skill useful. The next question was what enchantment the monster had used on him while he tried to work out what it was. His head was full, and he began cursing the lack of internet in the world. He decided to check the library to make things clearer. Then they immediately went to ask about one. He asked the owner the same, who said books are expensive now, and told him he needed to go to the capital to get that information. On top of that, I was spreading some clothes. She explained there was an old man who loved books. Despite calling him an oddball, she agreed to write a letter of recommendation. Accepting it, he took the map and reached the place where it had been given. The old man lived there, and after he knocked, an old sack that collected books stepped forward and was introduced as Will. After explaining the situation fully and presenting the letter of recommendation, he was invited into the house. He took him straight to the library. They asked him to handle them all carefully. Asagi was very happy to have the chance to find what he wanted. The moment he looked, he realized there were many books he could not handle alone. It was meant as a surprise, and his reaction showed how surprised he was. The old sack couldn't stop himself from laughing in his face. In reality, Saji had no words because he had never expected a book collector to own so much. They sat at the table and Asagi asked about enchantment. That was a pretty good subject, so the old man went. Alone, he went to collect the books and then brought a few that covered the same subject. The first book covered the basics of enchanting, and after taking it, he thanked him simply, while the book collector seized the chance to show off his knowledge and collection and invited him to ask for anything else he wanted. Taking a deep breath, he began reading all the books. Meanwhile, he was given tea to ease his fatigue. The caretaker there was a kind woman who asked him to take care of his health while he focused on his books. So far, none of the books she had looked at contained the information he needed. No books mentioned a beast granting skills to someone, and Asagi did not look pleased. Even after reading so many books, he still wondered why he had gone all that way. He knew that staying silent would get him nowhere. He said he fought a giant wolf the other day, but before he could finish the sentence, the old man was so shocked by the claim that he screamed. The caretaker calmed him and explained that this reaction was to be expected, because the monster he described had lived in the forest for a very long time. Asagi already knew about it and realized he did not have enough knowledge about that monster. The old man went on to say it was a monster, on a completely different level than the rest. Asagi wanted to know what he meant by an entirely different level. He revealed that ordinary monsters rarely evolved, and it was almost unheard of because they don't evolve just by aging. Long ago, a scientist tried to raise a small monster, but it never developed. That meant one scientist had finished it. His research focuses on detailed reports kept in the royal palace's forbidden books, and one passage describes him giving highly concentrated magic to weaker monsters. Most died almost instantly, but one survived. When asked what kind of monster it was, the man fell silent for a moment. It then revealed that it grew at an explosive rate that defied logic and escaped after destroying an entire town in seconds. They were forced to call in the royal army to kill the beast, but the casualties were catastrophic, and the researcher, fearing for his life, fled. He was later captured and condemned on the spot when it became clear his research had caused so much destruction. Put simply, his claim of being on a different level meant the monster could defeat everyone in an instant, and Asagi now realized that, when he had fought the giant monster, it had not been a serious contest. The old man apologized for changing the subject in the middle of the conversation. Then someone asked what really happened, but the boy said nothing. The old man had to bring him back to his senses. Asagi said he had been enchanted by one of those monsters. After so many years, this became increasingly hard for the old man to accept, and he took another sip of his tea. He told him he had never heard of a beast granting a human a skill. He clarified his only reason for returning was to find a library there. The old man told the human that monsters were always considered a threat to humanity. He warned him never to tell anyone in his life about this because it could raise many questions and get him caught. Put simply, the man warned him not to use his new skill in front of anyone. Later that day, while Asagi, although he didn't solve the enchantment's mystery, he learned the monster's true identity. From what he knew, that was not normal because the Beowulf was an evolved creature with immense power. In short, that monster wolf may have given him a unique skill. At that point, he wondered if he could manage it from then on. Putting his worry off until the next day, his heart was happy because he would meet Daniella. The next day, they were back at the breakfast table. When breakfast was served, Asagi was drooling from his mouth. All the restaurants in town were expensive, but the Guild Tavern, a food stall, served good food at the lowest cost, making it the best. He knew the town's food was unmatched, but he still wondered whether he could stay there forever. Any doubt disappeared as soon as he took the first bite. The bacon wrapped him completely, and the juice seeping through his body felt unlike anything he'd experienced. On top of that, bacon-wrapped scrambled eggs were as light and fluffy as a butterfly. It had everything, the crunch and the mixture of flavors, making it a completely different packet. This was the first time in a mango we saw a boy completely naked when it came to food. Burdened by expectations and going through a lot, he was struggling when Daniella came out of nowhere. That confirmed what he was doing and left him ashamed of being caught doing something so ugly. She then canceled the conversation during the greeting and only asked him to act like a human. Sitting on the other side of the table, she ordered breakfast again. Asagi knew this woman would also not be able to tolerate the taste. As Daniella tipped the first bite, he felt the same as Asagi. The taste was so good, she tried her hardest to contain herself. The food's overpowering appeal made her turn when the woman's expression changed. Asagi checked again whether she was doing well. Then she was encouraged to dip the bread into the soup and enjoy it, which would add another layer of flavor. When the lady applied it and tested it, it struck her that even though her whole body felt the forms, she could not control herself. Then ended up imagining the same scenario Asagi did. After the meal ended, both were delighted as well as satisfied. She thanked them for the food. They returned to the conversation about what they would do from then on. Asagi was asking whether they were deciding to stay or move to another town. He asked why the woman was traveling alone all the time. She reminded him of her story and explained that after losing her homeland, her only wish was to keep moving and see the world. Blessed with wealth, health, and millions of years to live, she enjoyed life and her way of deflecting, but Asagi seemed to be stopping her. Daniella had never seen it that way. Having visited so many towns, this one felt different. She then contacted Asagi indirectly. He said he was someone she could rely on completely for her life. That sounded like music to his ears, but he did not plan to stay there forever. He now decided he would leave with her whenever she agreed, since they were both at a party. Recalling the big monster's words, he remembered that the monster would also move to the other side when the goblins shifted to the southernmost part. At that moment, he decided to tell her everything. What he learned when he visited the old man about the monster. Once the whole story was told, the information proved invaluable, and she realized they were facing not an ordinary enemy they could handle. They now considered it a miracle that they escaped with little harm, and the conversation with the wolf made clear how intelligent it was. Now he believed they could ask the wolf not to do anything harsh to the villages. Even Daniella agreed they should try, otherwise this might end in nothing. They think the man would be listening to them. If they tried to deny it, he might agree, and that would be the best way for them to rely on him. They believed that if they could make him keep his word, he might set off on his journey, and they could continue on their way. They wanted to leave immediately to return to the forest, but they couldn't because it was pouring outside. With his plans to go out ruined, Asagi returned to his room and decided to practice magic. He didn't want praise, but he knew he had to be able to take care of her if they were going to travel together. At first, he gathered all the energy into his palm, formed it into a sphere, and tried to hold the shape as long as he could. After a while, when you looked at it, it seemed pretty good. To avoid any accidents, he decided to carry it very carefully. Practicing this again and again, he compared it to the ice bubble in his other hand and noticed that the more water he focused on it, the denser it became. Unable to detect what was causing the difference in feeling, he went back to Daniella to ask about it. At the door, he called out for the Almighty Master. When she opened it, she was in her night clothes and asked him to let go of the master thing. Holding both bubbles he'd made, he showed her how he was using them. The master rebuked him for using magic inside the buildings. She knew there was a chance he could lose control and destroy the whole building. At first, Asagi didn't think about it and kept calling himself stupid. She was only asking him to control the magic, take a deep breath, and steady it. Eventually, everything fell into place, and the magic in his hands settled into a perfect shape. The lady now believed magic should not be his first lesson because he needed common sense, called it a total disgrace, and had Asagi brought into the room while she sat in the chair. He held onto both magics in his pawns. Returning to the question, he asked what the difference was that he created one magic ball with his imagination, while the other was made using only water. Then asked for the difference between them. She said that one of the balls that got extra attention might have a higher concentration of magic than the others. The woman asked him not to follow all the steps to create a vivid magical image. It had to be perfect, and his only fault was a temporary lack of practice. One thing was clear to him: if he kept practicing like this, he would become a powerful adventurer. He did not understand. Those words sounded like music to his ears, and unable to hide his joy, he accidentally broke the magic ball. Water splashed onto the woman's face. Asagi apologized immediately for what he had done. Soaked, her wet clothes revealed parts of her body. Again, the woman felt embarrassed and found the situation inappropriate, so she asked him to turn around while the rain continued for 2 straight days. On the third day, with everything going well, they went out. But as they walked through the forest, they discovered that although the weather had just cleared, they still could not walk on the ground. Daniella reacted differently because she was not moved at all. That meant he was the only one attractive and experienced enough for him, and he was at just the right age. Once again, people treated him like a child, but in every respect he was still very young. They paused mid-conversation when the woman felt a presence just ahead of them. Asagi agreed, and because they knew it might be a risky crowd, they decided to back off while they still could. You could end up in a battle like this right now. When they arrived, they found only 2 of them. Their eyes were far more hostile than before. Hearing a call, the wolf looked up from the other side of the trees, and then he immediately backed away from Asagi. That meant the 2 were asking them to follow him deep inside. Deep in the forest, Asagi finally met the monster wolf, once his enemy and possibly a friend, that had been expecting him. Time to leave had come, and he knew he would be there. He never expected his visit would be this perfect. Asagi brushed off the wolf as if it posed no threat, made it clear he was there to ask an inconvenient favor. Knowing the request was one-sided, he still believed the man would understand and asked him not to attack villagers during his expedition. Wolf reminded him of the agreement he had made, and Asagi clarified that was why he acted that way, because if he attacked villages or people, a bounty would be placed on his head, and packs of monsters and adventurers would come to hunt him. Wolf reminded him that he was a demon, but Asagi kept asking for the favor, since he intended to fight alongside him. Asagi knew he was a demon, and even though a thought of performing demon worship crossed his mind, he knew it was all nonsense, and doing that was the least he could do. Wolf noticed the man was talking like a little warrior, and it was obvious he believed his request, so he was ready to take it. Asagi was amused to realize he had managed to get through to the monster. The monster already saw Asagi as a brother in arms, but the feeling on the other side was different. They reduced their bond to 2 warriors who had agreed to fight without making a fuss. They would go their separate ways to hone their skills and prepare for the day they would fight each other as agreed. By then it was time for the wolf to leave, so he planned to go. Their migration to the other part of the forest was complete, so he no longer had a reason to stay there. Before he left, he said he was eager to explore the open world and see how it would turn out for him. Once again acting like a hero, Asagi offered to help him and said he would be there if help was needed before the final battle. This made clear how self-important the man was, while offering help to a monster that could destroy a town in an instant. They then gave each other a fist bump. That was unexpected, but after that the agreement was finally reached. They both laughed at the good news. Daniella even enjoyed this sight. He read it as male bonding and understood that, even if the monster had raised a paw at her, she might have thought it was about to attack. Everything was settled. The wolf turned around and left with the pack. Both stood there smiling, knowing their target had finally been met. After asking where to move next, they rested for the day and planned to leave the following day. With the wolf problem solved, they set out. Now the only thing left was to say their goodbyes and pack their gear for the trip. Their first stop was the hotel caretaker, who was unhappy about their leaving but could not stop them for personal reasons. They thanked her for the hospitality she had shown them. It had been very helpful, and the woman wished them good luck in life. Asagi knew he would return to the city. Once again, this was his hometown after coming to this world, and he was not leaving forever. Next, he went to the blacksmith, who had made a sword for him, and he learned they were moving away after living in town for so long and realized they were about to go on a great adventure. He felt a little sad because he would miss them. The main reason for his visit that day was to repay the money he had borrowed on his first day in the city. The blacksmith told him to ignore it, saying it was just a gift. Everything was settled. He decided to move out to buy a few things before leaving the next day. Asagi was about to leave when the blacksmith stopped him. He wanted to give him something. After taking it, he stepped outside. Next, it was time to retrieve the ancient elven weapons they had found in the forest. Luckily, he met other adventurers who were like friends to him and told them about it. They were unhappy after hearing the news because they wanted him to stay. He hoped to see them again later in life, convinced this was not their last meeting. Just as he was about to leave the guild, Something hit his back out of nowhere, and the moment he felt it, he realized it was from the guild receptionist, and she was shouting because the man was leaving without telling her. She simply asked the man to come back and make a promise, and with no other choice, John agreed. But when he glanced across the reception area, the other receptionist just dismissed him. This was the last time he looked back at the guild house since he arrived, and as he walked away, he thought he might get a chance to return. Ensure the next person pays a visit to the old man's house. Will immediately called him back to his library, being told that he had instructed his monster friend not to attack any villagers or cities shocked him. On his final visit, he went to the blacksmith, who had expected this and knew he would miss the visitor's presence in the city. Asagi stayed to fulfill his wish to see the sword before heading out. When he presented the elven weapon, Asagi was very pleased. He was terrified at first, but a single strike from it caused devastating damage. None of them had expected it to turn out that way, and the weapon testing was finally completed. Asagi told him he would be leaving by the next day. The blacksmith wanted to visit him next time and then let him leave without further delay. They shook hands, feeling good about each other after a pleasant time. He had said goodbye to everyone he wanted to. By now, he had finished everything he needed to do before leaving. It was time for John and Daniella to leave. Daniella thought the boy had forgotten the weapons. He explained he wasn't carrying anything bulky and that Mr. Russell had given him something like a bag. It was dirty, but he told her it had a special enchantment, and though it looked like a small pouch, it could expand on the inside like a magic bag. The bag held everything, including the weapons and other gear they carried on their backs, and it looked like a four-dimensional pouch. It proved very useful to them on the journey they were on at the time. As he left, he felt he had learned a lot since returning to this town. Some goodbyes were hard, but they were meant to happen. While already traveling, they decided to set out for the new world. Asagi learned it would take them 6 days to reach the next town. That was quite long for them. Asagi saw no problem because they only had to pass through some mountains, not cross an ocean. On the 3rd day, the journey remained calm. But it changed when it started to rain. Wearing raincoats, they tried to clean it up. Both faced a major hurdle, and Asagi seemed the most affected. Although he felt cold on the outside, he had never traveled in the rain like that before, and while his vision was blurring, Daniella on the other hand felt nothing, and there were no trees in front of them. Feeling the breeze, they realized they had reached the edge of the forest, and Daniella immediately warned him to be careful because the land ahead was open grassland, very different from before, so they needed to stay alert. Asagi realized the wolves' evolution depended not only on their traits, but also on the environment up to that point. Before they met the advanced monster, they had only seen forest wolves, but since then they kept encountering all kinds of wolves. Danielle's ability let them sense any nearby presence, and she had used it since childhood, so it proved very useful. All he could think about was whether they could rest safely there. He dismissed the thought while preparing the meal, thinking instead about settling after the rain and the long grass there. He made the soup with dried meat and assorted vegetables. While preparing it, he waited for Daniella to come back. When she returned, it looked like a Saudi man had become her stay-at-home husband. He even pretended to be one in front of her by causing a scene. She told him a few grass wolves had been running around, but she had taken them down. Asagi praised her for her good work. Was she starving? Saad would serve her stewed meat with a bowl of soup. The moment she ate, everything was over in an instant. Now she was asking for a second. During training camp, he learned she ate a lot, and she said she didn't gain weight because of her resting quality. Despite the bad weather, everything calmed when he saw her eating her meal, and it tasted much better. Eventually, the pot was completely empty. Daniella immediately went inside to rest and asked him to stay alert. The rain had already stopped, and sitting there he realized that his hair was already much longer than before. Asagi prepared a meal from the dried meat while she rested. He enjoyed the grilling and drooled, wanting a bite. He called it the hidden joy of the night shift as he prepared a salt and spice mix that set his heart alight. Just as it was nearly ready, someone approached from behind. After being asked what he had prepared, he admitted what it really was. Just as he was about to take the first bite, Daniella had already smelled it and came over to question him about it. As soon as she appeared, she demanded her portion right away, which startled the Asagi. That morning it was already bright. Asagi said both of them gave up the food they'd been saving. While the morning soup cooked, Asagi went in to wake her, realizing that even if the woman proved to be nothing, fatigue did not move him. By the time the lady came to, Asagi was already exhausted. Without a second's hesitation, he told her to wash her face, eat breakfast, and clean up while he collapsed onto the bed. That afternoon, Asagi was seen being carried away on the woman's back. When he came to, he could not understand what was really happening. She clarified that he really could not walk on his own. Daniella had no intention of waking him after his night of guarding, so she carried him on her back. All along, she had been dealing with the consequences of resting too much. After climbing down from her shoulder, he looked at her. Feeling the weight, she realized she was carrying him and some of the equipment and found it rather tiresome. It was easy for Daniella, and her actions made it clear she enjoyed it. At first, she set aside her feminine charm and adopted a masculine demeanor. Left with no choice, he apologized for forcing her into it, something he had never intended. They were moving through the terrain when one of the monsters tried to attack. Both Asagi and the Ledi warned him about it. Spotting a good opening, he held back his sword, but that monster is right in its space. The moment it was stunned, Asagi sliced it in two with one strike. He stood no chance against Daniella, who was taking them down without breaking a sweat. With both tasks complete, they bumped fists and moved on. He realized she was reenacting the moment when Wolf and John bumped heads to show friendship. They decided to take the animal's pelt with them because it was damaged. Night fell and the camp settled once more. Tired looking after the overnight duties, it was relieved of fetching the materials for today's adventure. Knowing a lot about the world's monsters, he was eager to see what the forest was hiding. The next morning, Asagi came in again after making the soup, and woke her, then went straight back to rest. They did not move at all. This had happened repeatedly. Before he could finish this time, the situation changed. A woman screamed that there were monsters nearby, and asked him to step out of the tent. I found that the lady was already fully equipped. Asagi detected wolves nearby. However, the feeling was more like grass wolves. Daniella quickly used her magic to conjure something in her palm. Then he threw it to the far side of the grass, as if inviting whatever monster was hiding. A full pack of grass wolves moved straight toward them. Both immediately took their stances. Daniella made the first move. Asagi then slashed at the head of one of the monsters. They kept up the barrage by standing up for each other. Their resolve was strong, and none of them backed down. In any case, protect people and take down those monsters. Asagi was listening to the sound of the wind. He realized Daniella was using magic to kill the wolves. Somehow one of them was about to flee at once, and Asagi only raised his sword. He pointed at the monster, then used it to draw magic out of the creature. While enchanting the ice bullet, he struck it. He aimed straight at the neck, pleased he had succeeded. Daniella was very happy, and it seemed they had achieved their goal. Suddenly, Daniella stopped talking and kept staring at Asagi. After a while, the awkward silence broke. The next day she noticed the man had given her another slice cut. Asagi went inside and woke the lady after assigning her night duties. She rubbed her hair up, and Asagi was completely pleased and captivated by the sight. This time, things were much stranger than usual. He did not lie down to rest right away, but he told her to be ready for breakfast. He realized he'd become a full-time, stay-at-home husband. After checking the food, he found the soup had rich, overflowing flavors, and after adding the vegetables, it was finally ready. Daniella was delighted by the soup, but Asagi felt it was the least he could do while tidying the lawn. After confirming, he learned they would be in the village they were traveling to by the next day. The village was called Spirits. Asagi was excited about it and wanted to get there early. Planning to spend the rest of his time walking through the forest, he looked forward to the monsters he would encounter along the way, and every time. Maybe it was a wolf, some animals, or a goblin. A goblin fell as he cut it in half. As he put the sword back into his magic pocket, Asagi wondered why he really kept collecting those goblin monsters. He explained that because the monster was made of iron, he had to gather its pieces to sell to a blacksmith. This could give them some extra pocket money. Keeping up with it didn't stop him from feeling a bit restless after defeating such a low-level monster at level 30. Now he saw himself as a completely different person from the one who had returned a lost wallet to the policeman. On their fifth and final night, they had already set up camp, and as usual Asagi was on watch, so to celebrate they decided to hunt deer, found one without searching far, and carried it back to camp to prepare the meal. Asagi wondered how the Leis would react when they learned the dinner included deer meat. Again, he realized he was reaching the point where he could easily be called an ideal house husband. Asagi was completely absorbed in cooking, but the problem was they were already in the middle of the forest, and it was not a good idea. Putting his pride on the line, he prepared the meal for all the house husbands. From behind, Daniella stepped forward, drawn by a heavenly scent from the fire. When she arrived, she found the dish quite good and checked whether they could eat. Asagi was overjoyed to see her smile again. He looked forward to her astonished face when she tasted it, and he let his curiosity show. They checked whether it was safe to cook in the middle of the forest, and Letty clarified that the area they were in did not pose a significant threat. Not having gone on patrol, Asagi felt uneasy. He made a point of checking the area before they set up camp each time. With the food ready, they agreed to eat only their own portions. When Letty took the first bite, he kept watching her to see how her expression changed. The meat was so delicious it overwhelmed her. Asagi gave himself a perfect score as the stay-at-home husband. Every part of preparing that dinner was full of joy and the aroma of slowly cooked spices, but none of it compared to the pure bliss he felt after cooking it. Although the trip wasn't meant to be a vacation, it became one when they visited the next village, and he enjoyed it greatly. It was a chance to see it for the first time at night. He went inside right away to rest. Then he heard a voice outside saying a monster had arrived. Yawning again, he came out. This time they faced more than ordinary monsters. Asagi's eyes widened when he realized it was an orc. After hearing from the other adventurers, Asagi learned there were few people in that area, some of whom were from the southern mountain base, and he found their presence there strange. Daniella then revealed that a group of orcs had been wiped out not long ago. She then pointed to the mountain, to the spot at its top where it had happened. She concluded they were likely a group of travelers who had escaped the raid, the only plausible explanation for their presence at the moment. Asagi knew encountering them now would be a bad idea and checked how strong they were, since they had something that could destroy an entire log in a single strike. Worried, he asked again whether the woman had any chance of winning, and she smiled brightly, clearly full of herself, clarifying that they would only find out by trying it. Her smug look perfectly matched her cool attitude. Now he was deeply determined to take on those monsters alone. They knew they were facing true strength. They still had their own good things right beside them. Their speed, in particular, outweighed their strength. It was still dark, so Asagi came up. He planned to ambush and cloak them in darkness, a tactic the lady welcomed, so he hid and then attacked them with fire magic. With their guard down, Asagi used his detection skill and found 3 presences. The distance was about 700 meters, including an opening and roughly 200 meters of their bush. Asagi thought the area was small enough for them to camp in, allowing them to wipe them out while in range, and he wanted to do something on the trip to repay her for the equipment she had bought, so this might be his perfect opportunity. They bump hands again before going out onto the subjugation. They promised each other they would reach the town by the next day. Asagi took his own side. Then it moved very fast, fully motivated. He was convinced nothing in the world could stop him because they had the chance to finish what they started together. Both were already at the location. Asagi cast water magic on the leaves below too. I'm wasting them, then I created a jelly suit for hiding under the pile of leaves. He soon found a spot where he could hide perfectly. After that, it took 10 minutes for them to arrive, since they were all there. They were about to take the bait. In front of Asagi, he had tied the meat to a tree to get their attention. When one of the orcs noticed it, they ran straight toward it to grab it. After taking the bait, Asagi realized these orcs were starving to the bone. Apologizing for their journey, he said he would end it there. As the monsters started to move off the leaves, Asagi saw his chance. He immediately summoned upward icicles and ground spikes that impaled the monsters' feet in a single strike. The attack was followed by an arrow driven into the center of their head. With their lower bodies completely immobilized, they couldn't move. That was a good attack, and Asagi emerged from the ambush to use his sword. He tried to slice that monster with a single strike to kill it immediately. The strike seemed to hit the monster's neck. He couldn't decapitate it with a single swing, however. Determining the wound was fatal, he ended it, executing another attack with a perfect swing. The monster still managed to dodge it. On top of that, the attack landed another blow aimed at his neck, and somehow he managed to dodge it. This was not the person he was facing now, since the other was trying to protect him. Asagi realized his final slash had worked, because the monster's head had been decapitated. With that single strike, 2 of the monsters went down, and he realized his magic wasn't doing any good and decided to improve it later, not right now. A monster stood there and needed to be dealt with immediately. Daniella also came up behind him and warned him not to let his guard down under any circumstances. The orc seemed eager to keep fighting after losing two of his comrades right in front of his eye. The roar meant nothing to Asagi because he had already heard it from the great monster. When the monster attacked, Asaj thought another slice right to its belly was needed. The monster followed that attack with a counter, who tried to point his weapon at Asagi. Arrows came out of nowhere and struck his weapon, knocking it from his hands. Asagi found an opening and struck the leg, causing the monster to fall to the ground. Seeing it as his only strike, Asagi half-mocked the monster while standing on top. Realizing he couldn't get off, he chose to use his ice blade to finish off that monster. The strike landed on the throat, allowing Asagi and his friend to defeat it easily. They bumped hands again to celebrate their victory. The woman decided to teach him that he needed to be much more cautious before handling monsters like these. They could decapitate him with a single strike. Amused, Asagi realized the battle was against some of the strongest monsters, but it lasted only a few minutes, which felt strange. They decided to gather the fangs as proof of subjugation, and he was tired once again. With the tent set, he decided to get some rest. John was mostly shocked thinking about how the lady had managed to survive alone while traveling until now. Daniella told him she had only done it a few times, always traveling alone to fight monsters above her level. On top of that, whenever she traveled, she neither rested nor lit a fire to reveal herself, and all the tension was completely gone by morning. At first, it sounded like pure hell, since Asagi himself would never face this thing alone. Pleased, he turned to the morning, worn out from the night. The next day, while they were on their way to the town, Asagi sensed a presence, following him from behind out of the sud. Although he called it a monster, Daniella believed it was a person. Asagi stayed on guard because they did not know what awaited them on the other side, and since there were two signals, a S. Asagi did not know what they were, while the lady knew it was a horse and a rider. Soon, Asagi's detection skills paid off, and he realized the lady's words were mostly true. Asagi disliked that the lady had not revealed this earlier because she expected him to do it. His detection skills contributed a great deal. He felt a faint presence that Daniella did not notice, and the rider could be a bandit or something else, with no way to verify. They went on guard at once. Asagi found the girl's thoughtfulness amusing, and as they watched the lone rider, he wondered who might be behind him. Asagi was not feeling good. Seeing that, he immediately asked her to get out of there. He wanted to avoid getting into trouble. From his expression, he felt he recognized both the voice and the rider. Visibly frightened, he immediately asked the woman to stop. It turned out to be the receptionist again, riding a horse. Someone had been following him all the way to this town as the receptionist stopped in front of him. Asaj grabbed his head. He realized this was going to be a pain in the ass. She kept searching everywhere for him, and the way she said it showed she was already in love with him, clarifying what the girl was actually doing. She said she followed him and that it was unrelated to any personal or official visit. Asagi knew staying would cause more harm than he already faced, so he moved on immediately. At last, she told him the truth that the guild had decided to reassign some personnel and relocate. This showed up in the gut 3 days after those guys moved. To save time, she took half a unicorn. It was a special breed, she said, bred from the strongest horse and a unicorn. This explained why the horse shone the most. Asagi realized this horse might be the most powerful because it covered a 5-day journey in only 2 days. He began wondering when his party would have 2 of them so it could save them from. The guild receptionist was shocked to learn they were already so close to the village, and she had expected they'd have more time together until he said they'd fought real orcs on their way. Impressed by their strength, she realized that most of them must have moved during the subjugation request. They were about to reach the edge of the forest, which would take them both to the village town. They exchanged a look and felt relieved. The breeze there was all he needed. Asagi is enjoying it to the fullest. From their spot on the plains, they could now see the city. To them, this city seemed more proper than the previous one had been. Daniella felt awkward because she thought that last time she was there, it was plain, and she revealed it afterward. She said it had been more than 60 years, wearing a lady's pout, knowing this man had once again mocked her age. The idea didn't appeal to her. When he tried to relieve her, it didn't seem to work. He felt sure that from then on, it would be a great adventure. As they walked into the bright light and goodness, a breeze blew and all 3 were about to cross the grassland. They felt very good. One of the bunny monsters just passed by and caught their attention. Meanwhile, the receptionist told the elf it was delicious. The two humans looked at each other, clearly amused, after she made the comment. They couldn't tell how hungry the woman was, even though everyone else felt relieved. Isagi gave her the benefit of the doubt, while making her mannerisms more pronounced in how she protected them. He noticed clouds rolling in, though it had been sunny just a short while ago. The instant he looked up, he realized it wasn't a cloud, but something moving very fast. The moment they noticed, Isagi pointed at a monster. A wyvern rolled through the night sky. It reveals its presence and signals them to run away at once without hesitation. When Isagi urged Angela to regain her composure and honor the agreement, he noticed she couldn't move at all. She seemed glued to the floor, tears in her eyes and unable to move, yet she fought with all her strength. She could not speak, and he realized her past had frozen her completely, leaving the situation out of control. He kept trying to bring her back to her senses. He wanted to save the woman's life at no cost. Not there to argue about the situation, he immediately caught. He grabbed her by the waist and then decided to use Jay, a jack of all trades who has the monster skill and uses it immediately. Departed quickly from the location to get there directly. People fled the town to escape the monster. Moving at top speed, he did not slow down at all. The girl blushed, unable to keep up with the movement. She tried to hold onto something soggy so she would not get lost. By then, Isagi was running faster than the unicorn, which took only 2 days to cover the distance. The guild receptionist could tell him apart from the unicorn. Although Isagi could not control the speed, he did not intend to stop before reaching the location. Both of them kept rushing. The receptionist continued forcing the unicorn and calling it by her name. That somehow caught Isagi's attention, but he chose to keep running and ignore it. Meanwhile, Daniella was about to lose everything because of the constant motion. Remembering his main goal of saving her and feeling her shake violently, he did not worry about what would happen if it continued in the city. He believed the city had adequate defenses for such a routine incident, so this was not a real threat. He believed someone in the city could take down such a monster with a single strike. Approaching the walls, he looked again and confirmed his suspicion that this was not a normal occurrence, and then the monster growled out of nowhere, signaling it accepted the visit. The guild receptionist froze at the scream, and Isagi did as well. They kept running with no other choice. They knew their current actions were an incredible bargain, and as usual the boy worried about what lay ahead. As the woman considered leaving the present so the problem could be set aside, they speed up again in a burst and notice that the monster was closing in on them, so they had to run as fast as they could. Sagi searched for a way to warn the city about the coming monster and asked the elf for special arrows, who chose to use flash arrows because they thought it might work. Holding her ground, she created a situation where they could easily use the arrow to march on the city. Opening through the bow, she immediately cast it toward the city to signal its arrival. The arrow opened with a bright flash. Isagi believed the city residents would notice this. He told the woman to her face that it was impressive. Daniella saw it as a sign that she was doing all this to impress her student who had shortcomings. Relief hit Isagi when he saw the girl finally come back to her senses and be pulled out of her past, and he kept running, worried that if they stopped their breathing would end at once. As they neared the city's main gate, they discovered that some soldiers were coming out with their guard, marking their presence, which was good news for them. They trusted someone would take care of it. He worried that mentioning his legs would cause big problems because he wanted to. Planning to keep his skills hidden from everyone, he realized it was too late and decided not to hold back. They both planned to keep running down the hill, then climb onto the half-unicorn to escape, and they followed the plan. The receptionist ordered them both to hop on the unicorn since it seemed the best option. From above it did not really look like one. With the monster much closer to them, Isagi simply left Lady Denia. He was on that monster's back, asking her to go first. Instead of leaving him, Daniella held on and all three were now riding on the back of that half-unicorn. Voices called her name and urged her to rush forward as fast as she could. Daniella quickly slid her hand around his waist to keep him from falling behind. He was certain he couldn't move into an attack position from this world. Isagi still held some grudges against that monster. He wanted to impress the master who raised him, so he decided to show her something. Doing so, he raised his hand to give that beast a A shot of the magic he'd been practicing for so long. The instant he released magic into midair, he could summon an ice sword out of nowhere. Just as they were about to reach the mark, they and the soldiers on the city walls were still waiting for the monster to come into range of their arrows. Meanwhile, Asagi had already taken charge and drive the sword straight at the monster's eyes. Removing one of its eyes made it growl in pain. To be knocked to the ground by that single strike. The Wyvern was clearly in pain because it had not expected that move. That signaled the other soldiers on top of the wall. Now they also looked very motivated. They entered the city's safe zone through the main gate. Other soldiers readied themselves for the final strike. One order from the commander. All the arrows were fired straight at the monster lying on the floor. They believed that would be enough to bring it down, and they could clearly hear the monster's pain and suffering outside. Soon they cleared another inside the city when one. Some of the soldiers came running. Their arrival impressed him and shook the boy's hand firmly. People praised his skill for landing the first blow on the monster, and he had never seen that kind of attack used against a flying monster before. His performance was a kind of unique magic. Amused, Asadi hid how strong his legs were and said he had only cast ice in midair to attack it. The soldier called it incredible that he could create such a thing at close range, and he believed it was the man who had cleared the mess over the city, which could have caused severe damage and a major tragedy. The man told the soldier not to exaggerate because his excitement was far out of proportion. The soldier kept praising his optimism and his job as an adventurer, while Asagi tried to dismiss it as a coincidence that he was there when this occurred. That was the only reason he wanted to hide his magic in the first place and not show it to others. After a long time, a sudden realization shook the soldier, and when he regained his composure, he decided to honor the acquaintance. They were then introduced by the travelers, especially John. The guild receptionist introduced herself, knowing that both of the ladies must be exhausted. They agreed to tag along to the city's best hotel. They said they did not have enough money to live in the West. The soldier was ready to cover every expense without hesitation to clear his mind. While they stood by the fountain in the city center, the soldiers showed them the hotel where they would stay and kept calling him a hero, which Asagi was not ready to accept right away. With everything settled, the soldier gave him a firm handshake one more time and left, ready to return if those men ran into any trouble while standing aside. Asagi outlined their next steps after securing a free hotel room in the city. They introduced the hotel as the Sky Silver Pavilion. It looked high quality, and they were impressed by Harold's hospitality. Someone had brought them there without caring about the cost, and the receptionist was busy with her own work. She returned to the guild immediately and told them the organization had taken care of her lodging, so they did not need to be concerned. They both waved each other off until the next time. Asagi was not speaking properly, so she decided to show him the correct way. Before leaving, she hugged him from behind. They called each other companions, but Asagi felt no companionship and wanted to escape her by any means he could. After a while, Daniella still denied that the woman was her friend. She was very concerned and asked again whether he would do it with everyone. The receptionist felt Daniella was taking his side right now. No one answered, and Asagi, standing in the middle, felt completely lost. He wanted to escape the conversation any way he could. With everything settled, a proper farewell was given to the guild receptionist. She decided to leave. Asagi sensed a childlike excitement in the woman. Daniella also agreed that Asagi could be stubborn and took responsibility for getting him to behave properly. They were not trying to replace the masculine role with feminism, and it looked like they were going to visit the guild to handle the quests waiting for them there. Once the woman left, they finally, too tired at the main gate, he decided to enter the inn. The caretaker called the guests and confirmed how long they would stay. Asagi said it would last a week and might be extended by a few more days, depending on the duties they would take in the city. They received their keys and good wishes for their week-long stay. The place proved enormous, with dedicated rooms and well-maintained floors, and after reaching a certain point, they had to split up because their runes were assigned to 2 different corners. He was relieved they had separate rooms because otherwise it could have caused another accident. Asadi stepped into his room and found it to be a truly delightful one with the view beyond the city as seen from the window. He realized the town was fairly large compared to. It was the same as in the previous town, which made sense because there was plenty of room for expansion around there. Hungry, he immediately decided to go to the cafeteria. As soon as he reached the main gate, he discovered the area was lavishly decorated. It almost felt like a real restaurant. The outfit he wore did not suit the place. Danielle stood behind, hungry, and asked to tag along with him. They both decided to start shopping for clothes from then on. Danielle looked confused. When they sat around the table to eat, Asagi, after eating most of his meal, folded everything to the lady. The lady clarified that from then on they could go clothes shopping and find good items and some new equipment for an upgrade. In fact, Asagi upgraded himself after defeating some monsters on his own, and then he decided to check his status again too. It showed his magic stats had risen slightly. It was expected because he had been practicing a lot and focusing on his mana concentration. Later, Daniella said her level had already exceeded 70. Asagi congratulated her, and Daniella said it was not really based on age and that, having avoided fighting any monsters during her recent travels, her combat experience was relatively low compared to Asagi. That was why she had been making up for the past. Still, Asagi felt he should congratulate her because she had been working harder than anyone to make it happen. The next day, while shopping and checking the map, they looked for the clawless shop. Daniella thought this was a pleasant town that had once been a small farming village. Asagi decided to tease her about her age again by reminding her he had not been there when she saw it. Unhappy with the proclamation, she gave him a grinning look in return. As they neared the location, he became completely lost. In the map, he was unable to look up, and then he bumped into a huge man in front of him. When he looked up, he realized the news was bad. It was an adventurer in a very bad mood. He seemed to have insulted a local. Deciding to use his unique legendary skill, the art of apologizing, he kept apologizing without stopping for his carelessness. Even the man felt moved, so he patted his shoulder, told him there was nothing to worry about being recognized as a newcomer in the city. A passerby introduced himself as Zoro, an adventurer who said they would meet again soon. They introduced themselves as they shake hands. They hoped to meet again in the future, and Asagi spoke in a very formal way for an adventurer. A simple request to knock it off solved the issue, since it wasn't really a problem to begin with. The adventurer walked away as Asagi waved him off. At first he worried needlessly, and now everything is settled. He noticed something awkward and turned to Daniella to confirm. There was always that silence when they were about to meet new people. Daniella had not expected the remark from the start. It was clear to him because the same thing had happened when they first met. She could not express the statement clearly. She admitted to him that she was not at all good at conversation, and she blushed as she said it. Daniella said she could only talk to him when they had something to discuss. Now she considered him only as someone concerned with the subject. The little elf explained that, until she met him, no one had played a part in her life, and now that he had mentioned it, she found it easy to express herself around him. Asagi, however, had assumed that because the woman had traveled so much. Confident she could talk easily with others and would not see it as a problem, they decided to continue their expedition. To prove herself and not look bad in front of him, Daniella spent all her time with him. She said she intended to improve from then on, and the man giggled, amused when he saw her change her answers to suit the situation. They arrived at a shop called Goblin Boutique. They didn't like the shop's name the moment they entered. They were thoroughly amused by the outfits, which were placed in a way that looked worse than anything else. Everything around seemed to be blooming with teenage hormones. He believed those kinds of clothes did not suit his taste. However it looks, Daniella had already chosen one of the dresses. While showing her collection, Asagi pointed to another dress that was cuter. It shocked her even more, as she did not know how or when she was going to wear it. The shopkeeper approached from behind. Ask those guys to keep quiet while they are in the store. Asagi apologized for causing such a fuss in that situation. He clarified that his friend had found the cloth she might like. A shopkeeper decided to give a discount on the purchase. Daniella wanted to deny it, but it seemed this would make no difference. As soon as she left the shop, someone grabbed the man by the neck, thrown into the air along with the pocket, and somehow dropped his guard and never raised it. It was pure athleticism. He simply asked her to be polite and said they should buy something so it would not seem rude to the shopkeeper. He made clear they could not leave the shop without buying anything. He then handed over the item he had bought from to her as she put it in her hand. Blushing and with a red face, the woman pouted and accepted that the request to make a purchase was unnecessary. Later, Asagi pulled a face and asked her to put it on. It would go to waste otherwise. He kept telling her she had to wear it. If not, it would seem like a major waste, as the woman pictured how it would look on her. Deciding to make a one-time exception, she agreed to do it, and Asaji looked forward to seeing her in it. Just this once, they went back through the shopping area to find something he could wear. Simply put, a few men's clothing stores. That came upon another shop called Paw Armor. Once they entered, it asked them to view the shop. Welcoming them to the shop, the shopkeeper then asked about the person who would wear the armor. Asaji presented himself as the customer and then asked whether there were any suggestions. The shopkeeper led him around the store to show the clothing available to him. While passing, he found that all the material there was fairly ordinary. Although the shop was worth far more than anything else, one ordinary shirt was tagged with the highest price. After clarification, they said the t-shirt was enchanted. This simply doubled the current ability. He claimed it was the only equipped shirt in the world. He thought it was pretty insane, and the shopkeeper said the item was being sent to auction because its price made it hard to sell. Asaji realized the place was full of all kinds of fantastic artifacts, and he was considering taking this on his own. It could be one of the best things. Seeing the boy's interest, the shot remains on him. Decided to give him a chance to try on the item. The Saudi doubted he could really own it, but the shopkeeper was unconcerned because the shirt had several spells that let them track and control it from afar. Wearing it could kill someone within minutes, even if they tried to run, and he warned the item was very dangerous. The shopkeeper normally refused to give it to customers, but he made an exception for the man because of his character. Before leaving, Asaji checked with Daniella. He believed he should accept it because it could become an important part of his armor. Once he had it, Asaji realized he could try it without a second thought, and he accepted the offer in front of the shopkeeper. He stepped into the fitting room and tried on the shi. The shirt was 100% cotton. The fabric was from Japan, and the shopkeeper then led him to a designated area. As he moved, everyone there was chatting. They seemed to be discussing something. The shopkeeper asked him to channel a little magical energy into it to activate its agility, and Asaji looked worried. I reconfirmed it with Daniella and asked her to handle any problems if anything went wrong. Raising his guard, he assumed the stance. They followed orders and added some agility and a little magic to the next step. He wanted to move very fast using jack of all trades. This time it was faster. Some people couldn't even feel the movement. A man sped through the center of the city. He shocked everyone, including himself. The men standing there could not understand what had really happened in a blink. Amused by his current strength, he realized it was exactly twice his agility. The crowd praised the boy for moving faster than a blink, and Assad, you thought the item was amazing. He apologized quietly for making it go much faster than he'd expected, while the shopkeeper stood stunned. He thought that if he had run, he might not have been able to stop him. The shopkeeper was shocked to hear him falter, since he never expected a single shirt to have this effect. He clarified that it was his agility and his skill as a jack of all trades. Now he fell into thought. He wondered if it was worth keeping, since he was currently on the same. She reached Daniella's level and realized it was all because she'd become a jack of all trades so quickly. He could not decide whether taking the item was a good idea. Later, he put it back on the shelf and he changed back into his regular clothes. The armor also caught his eye, made of demon skin and covered in enchantments. The shopkeeper came over to check whether the man had found what he wanted. When he noticed another suit of armor, the shopkeeper revealed it was made of dragon leather. On top of that, it caused a stampede of young dragons in the north. He said a man probably showed up, dealt with them quickly, and was regarded as a hero. When the woman heard about the dragon stampede again, shivering, she sat down on the floor right away. Unaware of the hero, Asaji asked and found out. The hero's name was Yasushi Matsumoto. When Asaji heard the word, he froze for a moment. He realized the words were a Japanese name he had heard once before. His reaction showed the name was familiar, so he stood still for a moment and after checking again, confirmed the man was fine. He pretended it made no sense. This was the first time Asaji had heard anything from the other world about his home, so he froze. It became clear why the armor was so cheap. The shopkeeper explained that because the item was made from young dragon skin, it protected against fire and magic, boosted strength, and cost about 40 gold coins. Every part of that garment was made from dragon skin or hair, including all pieces needed to make a complete set. The shopkeeper offered it for 60 gold pieces. Leather was so plentiful that he believed it was affordable. Even this price appealed to Asaji. He couldn't buy it immediately. The shopkeeper said it would cost 80 gold coins in the usual market. The price dropped briefly and was back to normal the next second. It annoyed him because he now wanted to flirt with the market even more. The shopkeeper's pushing made it clear he wanted the man to buy immediately. Asaji declined to borrow money from the woman because it could lead to ruin. Though he wanted it, he passed because it was beyond his budget, and the shopkeeper, knowing a good merchant does not pressure customers, stepped back. Despite the last record showing the items would cost more than 100 gold pieces for the whole outfit, he now planned to cut the price to 80 because of the good deal he had given him. Asaj saw that this salesman. I tried to make the best of him, but because he was Japanese, his bargaining was just beginning. Asaji was confident the next auction would go well because of the demonstration he had just given. Even the shopkeeper was sure that what he said was mostly true. He knew that whatever he'd done outside would increase their sales. Asaji agreed to do everything in his power to sell it if he lowered the price to 60. The shopkeeper was working the lock to get the job done. Asaj had not moved before the bargain, reminding him that he would face a struggle if Asaji did not stand by his side to sell the cloth. To show that the merchant had his best interests at heart, he reduced the price to 75, and in the end, they decided to sell the material for as low as 65 gold pieces. Asaji knew paying 60 for the armor would be a ripoff. To avoid giving any more chance to advertise the items he bought from shops around the world when he traveled, as he said, the merchant seemed ready to give up. He asked that this ad be considered for the purchase he was about to make. Having no other choice, the merchant decided to complete the sale with a single item. She made sure no questions were raised when Asaj left the shop. He asked again if he could gather all the gold coins. Asaji was completely sure he could. Having decided to get the coins no matter what, Asaji had about 20 gold coins and 60 silver coins, and after doing the math, he had only 10 left, since the rest of the silver went to the party. Daniella couldn't understand why the man had gone to such trouble to accept it when he did not have enough money, but John told her to stay calm and go to the guild. Find out if anything could help them prepare for the purchase they were about to make. Daniella decided to support his hope. Asaji promised to make this a reality. Once again, the lady indulged his emotions. They called him lucky to have her by his side. Asaji pretended not to understand anything. She made clear that both of them were in this together and were part of it. By working together, they could easily double their income. Now she was suddenly acting like his wife. Asaji kept asking whether she would really go along with his sudden impulse, and the woman bumped his back again and confirmed they were together so he shouldn't think that way. Asaji felt this way after having a good partner at his side, and Asaji thanked her for being amazing. Without warning, he proposed to her with the 3 magical words, and left the woman with her face completely red, who started running and tried to deny it. A small burst of emotions came through. After a long walk, they finally reached the city's guild and found it in Mormon. Daniella believed that whatever job they got would pay them a fortune. Each person present had a unique skill and their own tier. The receptionist recognized them both as new to the city. Asaji confirmed this and said where they were traveling. The lady immediately recognized him as Great John, who had traveled far and saved the city from a great monster, just as she had described. Asaji had never expected the rover would turn out like this, since his attack only managed to scratch its face. He hadn't done anything else. The receptionist had been hearing a lot about him, and said the district guard captain had even filed a request to give him a reward for his good work. He had only asked the girl to give him the largest share of the bounty on that monster's head and could not understand the reason. Those soldiers had always been the ones who took it down and caused most of the damage. Daniella also looked completely blank. The receptionist then listed the materials taken from the monster, including all the high-grade items, the monster's wings and scales, and the heart, all of which now belonged to him. Reading the paper, the material was written to show it had been completely given to him. Asaji could not accept that the guild guard had approved it, nor that someone like him would take all the CR. The receptionist said this wasn't all the material from the monster. Body scales were in highest demand. These items were not listed, which meant they were handed to the guards who took them down, and the captain's men had already been paid. He might be enjoying himself at the bar right now. Asaji asked again if he could take all the material, and she smiled, agreed, and told him the location was the magical storage. They asked him to submit the receipt at the reward counter to be reimbursed for what he paid. On the other hand, they were clearly fighting in the bar while drinking to celebrate. Regarding the reward delivery, Saji said he wanted to present proof of the orc killing. No other receptionist was there, so it was a day off. The other receptionist asked for a status card in addition to the parties. After confirming all materials related to the subjugation, she went in for questioning. He also presented a list of other materials he planned to take from the slain dragon. And after receiving some confirmation, Daniella interrupted him somehow. When she asked him to cash the material, Asadi thought it was a good idea. Cashing out the material might bring him close to his goal. He asked right away how much he would be paid for all the items, and the receptionist said they needed time to check. They both decided to wait on the chair. Asadi was pleased that they could sell all the high-quality materials and expected to earn a large sum. People were unaware he could sell off the material. He planned to keep it in his pocket and never take it out for the rest of his life. One of Asaji's silly habits seemed to impress Daniella. She knew he was involved in other strange activities, such as often he ran his fingers through his hair when he was trying to figure something out. The thing that pleased the lady most was Asaji's beautiful eyes. They were always amusing, and he was deeply lost in thought while the girl beside him paid close attention to him. Now he recognized it as a sign of love. He began flirting with her immediately, saying her eyes were more beautiful than his and remarking on their color and striking appearance. She clarified that the ice color changed after she learned the skill, which was normal, though it had not before then. An awkward silence lingered while the woman looked up. Asagi realized she was probably thinking about home right then. The woman who lost her entire family likely carries a heavy burden in her heart. At that moment, he felt something in his heart. She couldn't tell if it was sympathy or something more. The receptionist then informed them and apologized for the wait, clarified each item, and told them there was no active request for the material. It would be offered at market price, and the guys were ready. The reward totaled 3 gold pieces and 16 silver pieces, far more than they had received in the previous town. Moving on to the Wyvern dragon material, she quoted the current market price. And I expected it to be fairly high for Asagi. The receptionist confirmed each item would give him 50 silver pieces. The membrane costs 3 gold pieces each, and the scales cost 10 gold coins. 20 gold coins were given to the monster's heart. Asagi thought he must have misheard her. She said the monster would yield a large amount of material and added that the final amount he would receive would be around a total of 57 gold coins. An awkward silence fell as the two adventurers looked at each other for clarification. The receptionist wasn't involved in their chit-chat. Once it was confirmed the items could be converted to cash, she handed over 57 gold coins for the Wyvern materials. The adventurers could not accept that they had been given such a great reward without doing anything. Daniella clarified that they were not dreaming at all. Asagi packed everything into his bag and then started moving along the street. That he had been feeling energetic and lucky lately. After receiving all the money, he felt it was time to review the pool and he discovered that after selling everything and accounting for it properly, he had 60 gold coins and 60 silver coins. Daniella approved using the money to buy the equipment, and he could not say how he felt about the approval. The gear he planned to buy was top quality, including a dragon set with underclothes and a hood, and because every piece was enchanted, the price was reduced to 60 gold coins. The shopkeeper didn't lower it to 65, so he had to get 40 silver coins in total to pay it off. He figured getting it would be easy, and he could take down some wolves to do it. He chose a safe route instead of using violence or moving out of the way. They both went to the quest board to pick a quest for the day. They searched for whoever paid them the most. The cobalt monster was on their radar, but there was more to it. Another request called for the dragon to be subdued immediately. They were shocked that another dragon arrived right after the soldiers had just taken one down. Inspecting them and discovering that this dragon may have built a nest, Daniella said it might be coming from the forest they just escaped. The location shown on the board suggested it came from when they killed the orc, but for now they declined the request. They chose the quest to subdue the grass wolf and fulfill the goblin request. Once it was confirmed he reached level 36, he was promoted to the olivine rank. At last, Asagi was happy to be able to do it. Once again, the receptionist asked him to wait. Daniella had been sitting in the corner, but when he arrived, she was not there. She returned after a while and explained she had gone to a food stall to get something to eat. There he told her he had earned a rank. Since rank D was the entry level to the gemstone rank, she found it impressive for his growth. The olivine rank reached level 50, and the next rank was garnet. This covered up to level 70, also known as rank B Asaj Real. He realized the path was long and would take him time to reach. There was more. His party member was far above him at the moment. Assad was pleased to be able to catch up right away. At that point, after they finished their ranking rituals, Asaji asked to stay in the forest to earn some money, so they agreed to be apart for a while. Daniella thought the man loved resting in the trees, and that was why he was taking the job. Asaji declined and submitted a request to be away for 5 days, while the lady remained at the hotel the whole time. Both promised to return, but the moment he made that promise, Asaji was unsure whether he could keep it. Deciding to prepare, he gathered the supplies he would need for the next 5 days. They first went to the blacksmith to get everything they needed. As planned, he visited every shop and sold the contents of his bag. It gave him far more value than he had ever expected, enough to cover the trip. The next day, as he stood at the city gate asking to leave, the soldiers would not let him. They immediately recognized him as the one who had defeated a dragon. Asaji remained unmoved and left the city. He enjoyed walking through the place where a monster had tried to kill him just a few days earlier. When Asaji entered the forest, he did not realize something inside him was changing. He never realized that falling in love was more powerful than anything. Waiting alone in the tree, Asaji remembered how it used to be with Daniella. It would hurt him even more than he had expected. Resting on the tree gave him no relief. The next morning, he woke to bright sunlight. Welcome to another beautiful morning, as always. Leaving the tree, he decided to move on while his camp was where he had to return. The bag he carried was important and completely enchanted. He cleared the camping area of everything to avoid attracting uninvited guests. On the first day, he completed a few goblin quests alone in the forest to begin the expedition. Later that day, he collected more than 50 of the weapons. The forest impressed him, filled with so much material. He was certain that after 50 more of them, he could raise his level a bit. On the second day, he was gone. That if he kept subjugating others, he would have more weapons than he would ever need. On top of that, he couldn't find any monsters other than goblins on the last day. Although he tried to use his detection ability, he could not sense anything. Something behind the rock caught his attention. The moment he chose to sneak up, he found a pack of monsters resting after their afternoon meal. On the first strike, he defeated one of the monsters with a single attack using the jack-of-all-trades. Then, without waiting a second, decided to go after the others. Before they could figure out how to respond to the sudden attack, Asaji sliced off several of the monsters' heads. Later in the fight, he decapitated them all at once. A few simple strikes were enough for him to eliminate the presence as well, and the lives of those beautiful souls. Later, he even gathered all the clauses as evidence. Drinking water eased his fatigue. They realized the enchanted bottle kept it cool and always full, which was very useful. From there, he continued to tighten his grip. At that moment, Yellow was not feeling well while soaking in the bath. Relaxing and feeling amazing. She waited until he returned from the expedition to tell him about the good news. Lately, she realized that whenever she had something good to eat or was in a good situation, she always thought about Daniella. At the time, she pictured the man hiding in a tree with an excited expression. That seemed to be happening. In the forest, Saji felt a presence. Something inside told him this feeling was very bad. He managed to creep up on the wavering monster. It rested calmly in the middle of the forest. He had no good feelings about it. It looked the same as before, and he was there to take down some packs of small monsters. He couldn't bring himself to write it down at that moment. It occurred to him that although this place had been a den for those wolves, they might have run off when the monster appeared. Another presence in the forest caught his attention, and he wondered if it belonged to adventurers. Realizing they might be entitled to the spoils of the subjugation. Assad, you found everyone in Dis. He decided to tell them he was there. When the adventurers saw him, he immediately told them he would run and not stay behind. Even if they considered him an idiot, he wouldn't risk his life for this. While he considered the best course of action, either run or hang back and watch. Choosing the second option, he thought he could learn from watching these guys fight the monster on their own, which might help him in later fights. An adventurer stepped in front of that monster and was about They stepped out to prepare to attack while the others, for staying behind to provide support. Others held back to launch a surprise attack when the monster was unprepared. At that moment, the expedition finally began as everyone acted at once to bring it down. As arrows were fired at the dragon, it noticed them and didn't even. You can try to dodge them because those arrows had no effect on it. Driven by anger, it just growled and Asagi revealed the whole story behind it. They were deliberately wearing it down. Despite a rough start, they gradually turned the battle in their favor and began attacking from all sides. The diversion allowed them to damage its wings, while the tank kept it occupied the whole time. The tank kept a small shield up to absorb most of the damage constantly. The rest of the party focused on the target, allowing the group to deal heavy damage. It was only a matter of time before the dragon's wings were disabled, and it looked like they were all targeting them at once. The dragon was preparing for something, while all the adventure continued. Had now taken a position behind the tank's shield. After gathering all its power, the monster unleashed dragon breath on them. The tank kept the shield up the whole time and showed no sign of backing down. Even Asagi, hiding behind a tree, felt the power. He realized that this meant the monster had finally regained the upper hand. A single breath attack broke through the shield. This strike knocked out the tank. The whole adventuring party lost control of the situation once they realized they couldn't make it. Two other adventurers and the rest of the group decided to take the opportunity to be the tank. Asagi realized this was very bad. Whatever they were doing would put them in serious danger. This was clearly visible on their faces. While some adventurers tried to help the injured, another took command to be the D. The dragon had no interest in fighting the other. It wanted to take one life immediately. Asagi realizes this is very bad. He decided to use the forest wolf's legs to distract the monster for a while. Wanting to scream, he was stopped immediately by something. Instead, he used the skill to save their lives and stop the overthinking and leave him with no other choice. Asagi used it immediately and lunged forward into the air. He decided to merge with his sword and plunge it into the monster's body, but it seemed pointless because the blade shattered on impact. He was relieved he had managed to divert the monster's attention. In the end, it meant nothing, and the monster was angrier at him than at the party. The leader couldn't determine where this man actually came from. Asagi told him to run immediately while he held them off. He told them not to be stupid because he planned to run away as soon as they could get away. At first, they were not ready to accept the adventure. He thought what he was saying made no sense. Later, he got a promise and his name from him and then ran after him as fast as he could. At last, the fight was one-on-one, with no one else around to watch. Asagi began using the legs his monster friend had given him, moving at high speed and trying to land punches. The monster stopped every part of his attack with no trouble. It was poised to unleash the breath of fire again, identifying the right opportunity. Asagi immediately used the forest wolf's legs and struck the monster squarely in the face, preventing it from moving any further. He was determined to give them as much time as possible. He decided to use his ice sword since it would be useful in this situation. He thought he wouldn't use the forest wolf's combination. He used his sword and speed to make an opening. Believing this was the only way to depend on himself, he now had to put all his training into action, knowing he had to F. By time, they planned to call the guards for help, knowing the adventurer's condition. Once one of them was injured, he knew it would take him time to get back. That's why he decided to wait until then. In Asagi, the final battle between them was about to begin. Sensing the monster was about to charge, he immediately used his ability to move at high speed. Using those legs, he shifted position midair as he tried to attack the monster. He felt it was all useless, so he relied on a jack-of-all-trades to anticipate its moves and how they would affect things. He knew he could use the images to be more effective in the battle, and considering this a real cheat. They were glad to gain that knowledge. Without warning, he landed a powerful kick on that monster. A sharp-edged blade appeared and slashed across the enemy. The attack affected the dragon, which had been storing all its pain and sent it bleed. It had an impact but was not fatal. Spotting another opening, the dragon decided to use its dragon. Use breath as a counterattack while a Saudi. They dodged it in midair while coming down. I planned to deliver another slice to its body and left side. He realized once more that his sword was doing no damage. Only his magical attacks worked when he used different types. This must be why the whole party failed, because they didn't use it. While he was in the middle of realizing it, he let his guard down completely. Now he stood before the monster's dragon breath, not fully aware of what was coming, and tried to block it with his sword's crossguard, but it was not strong or useful enough. When the smoke from the dragon's breath finally cleared, Asagi looked completely exhausted after that single strike. He realized that using the Pregue's monster's enchantment somehow let him lessen the impact. Seeing the situation, he realized he could not fight this monster alone. He immediately started it by making an opening. While he considered how to escape, the dragon had been chasing him the whole time. He had already caused more than enough problems for it. His own actions even broke his sword. Now it was clear the sword's broken half was lodged in his leg from the earlier attack. His legs hurt so much that he cursed his carelessness, paused, and somehow managed to pull the sword free, enduring unbearable pain. He then used his ice magic to seal the wound. The pain hit him harder, but he somehow managed it, and knowing he needed to get away from the dragon, chose to heal himself in the meantime. In the middle of the forest, he noticed a little girl. Seeing that, the dragon immediately shifted its target. Turning toward that lady to take her life, he shocked her immediately. The dragon was very vicious and could change targets using its intelligence depending on the situation. Asagi knew he would not let it hurt the lady. He accepted it as true when it was about to use the dragon breath. Then he cast it and the ice sword came again. He moved with full intent to deliver a fatal strike to its head. The dragon's scales could tear an attacker in two, yet none of the scratches reached the dragon's body. The ice proved useless, so they decided to use a different attack, firing an ice arrow. I thought it might work. As usual, when dropped from midair, it made no impact. Only the minor skills had some damage, but none of it was pointless. But without waiting even a second, he immediately ordered the little girl to run. Because that might cause him more trouble, the woman decided to pick some herbs before heading out, which was rather laughable. With her life on the line, her worry was understandable. Even Asagi wanted to run, but he couldn't. He didn't mind wondering whether the guards knew something waited for them in the forest. For the first time, Asagi intended to fight the monster alone, but he could not think of a plan. Wanting to prove his worth to Daniella, he intended to develop a power within himself right away. Once again, only Asagi and the monster stood facing each other. He thought about how strong Daniella was. Because she couldn't face her past, he had to protect her, so he had to keep the promise no matter what. Asagi was determined to stand his ground and destroy the Wyvern to prove. His worth went unnoticed until the woman was ready to face her past. He believed she was strong as well as the first person for whom he was. I'll take all the risk and destroy this dragon. Convinced he had no doubts about running away. His desire to keep adventuring together felt completely overwhelming. Now he realized he wanted to be with Daniella. That gave him a chance to understand what it actually felt like his love for her was. It wasn't just fake, and that was more than enough reason for him to fight the monster. No matter what, a mysterious power surged through him at that moment. He was sure nothing could stop him from killing that dragon. He had come up with a fairly simple strategy. Combining his ice sword with the forest wolf's legs, he made sure every step he took was calculated. He immediately raced around the trees in the forest to create an opening against the monster. The dragon tried to unleash all its breath at once to bring him down. At last, he found the moment he had been waiting for since the attack began. At that moment, the dragon seemed unprepared for the attack. He quickly aimed at the monster's tail and cut it in two with one strike. The monster couldn't hold back a scream from the pain. It was simply suffering in that moment. Asagi felt the same and decided to use it. He attacked as soon as he found an opening. His next target was the leg, and he was about to take the hit. Using its cunning, the dragon faked its breath attacks to create an opening. Even the fake somehow turned into a real one out of nowhere. And Asagi was hit by the strike, engulfed in the dragon's breath and thrown far away. Asagi lay on his back on the floor. He was in severe pain, and afterward he came to his senses. Constantly thinking about what to do, he had to either find a way out or run. He thought about what he could use to defeat it. I even thought of rivers or tools that might be useful. At that moment, he realized he was close to his campsite. This meant he could keep the hair paste he had made. He somehow kept his courage and reached the camp, where he held himself together. He climbed to the top of the tree, and there he He managed to find the bag, which was like a treasure to him. He grabbed the bag he was holding, then saw another dragon charging toward him at full speed to strike. Asagi managed to withstand the strike while hiding behind the tree. But that thing even pierced it, and now it felt miserably hot. If the tree had been just a couple of millimeters thinner, his shoulder would have been burned right off. The dragon was trying to find the soggy place where he was hiding. Asagi immediately stepped out of his hideout, confident that he could face the monster with his tool bag. He immediately searched inside and took something out. This ancient elven sword. As he ran into the air, that monster was. They closed in at high speed to cover him and engulf him in the dragon's breath. While doing that, he suddenly realized he didn't F. Others assumed he could just run away, so he decided to do the opposite. They had only one choice, survive or die, as the monster prepared to unleash its dragon breath. Asagi used the sword and decided to keep it in its mouth. When the slice hit, it somehow damaged the dragon far more than he had expected. A severe attack left Asagi's face completely covered in blood. When the scene cleared, he was revealed as the victor after slicing the monster's head off in a single strike. He managed to stand on his own. He managed to walk to the city's main gate, but as he went he could not believe he had really won. Arriving at the gate, he stunned the soldier who saw him covered in blood and could not recognize him. He had just asked the guide to call the captain of the group of soldiers, and shortly after. When the captain finally arrived, he could not believe the man was in this condition after making that terrible decision. Assad had just confirmed his victory in the battle. The man was worried about his life. Otherwise, he could have killed himself, while the adventurer he'd saved was in critical condition and being treated in the medical room. There was still a chance he could make it through. He was pleased to hear that, and the captain decided to take him along to the. He ordered them to the hospital immediately and said he would send soldiers to retrieve the dragon's body before he went to the hospital. Asaj asked the soldier to tell Daniella he had returned. He wanted to tell her something right away. The soldier accepted the task. Asagi was taken to the hospital to rest. It was the first time he had been wounded so badly. It was strange that he needed magic to heal the wounds, since in Japan a wound like that would leave scars, but there they healed without a scratch. After resting for a while, he planned to tell Daniella the whole story the next day. He woke to the bright light of the sky. He felt his body was in poor condition. Every joint and muscle hurt badly. When he was awake, he felt awful. Daniella entered the house with a bright smile, making her first appearance. Seeing her delighted face made Asadu happy. She told him there that a soldier had come last night to report on him and his condition. She even called him a reckless fool. From the moment Asagi felt that feeling for her again, he began seeing her differently. Trying to explain that he never wanted things to turn out this way, he saw that Danielle was not listening. She then gave him a bright. Someone hugged her to his chest, while Asagi could not understand what had really happened. She told him that hearing he had defeated a dragon by himself left her breathless. At that moment, the woman could not control her fear. All the people she'd lost so far had been taken by this simple monster, and she was not ready to lose another. Relief came only when she heard his heart beating softly. It was making all the fear disappear, and she told him that from then on, Danielle would always stand by him and never leave him. Simply put, she also told the guy how she felt. She told him she would never let him go and would go with him whenever he went out. Relieved, Asagi realized the woman had already said everything he had been about to say. On the last day, when she returned to the hotel from her adventure, she was much later than usual. She was going to her own room when the caretaker stopped her. Tell her about a message that was going around. He then told her Mr. John was injured fighting a dragon. He told her he was resting at the medical center and they had asked her to come. As soon as the woman heard about it, she could no longer follow or understand what was happening. Then they started running without paying attention to anything else. While running, her heart pounded heavily because it hurt badly. The moment she opened the medical room, and the boy was found lying down, completely unconscious. Cannot re-even her arrival. Tears streamed down her face and she could not stop them. Despite feeling glad and thankful, she tried to understand how this feeling came to her right of way. He thought Daniella might now be in love with Asagi. Her only intention was to stay by his side. She blamed herself for letting him go alone when he asked, and she regretted not telling him the whole truth about her feelings. At that moment, Daniella felt more relieved than anything when she finally told him her true feelings while holding and hugging him. From then on, she walked beside him. When she looked at his face, he seemed even more handsome than usual. John also clarified that the moment he meant was when he was fighting. Running was his only thought until she came to mind, and he wanted to prove his worth to her. He chose to keep fighting because something stopped him from running away. While they both blushed, he finally disclosed it. The real reason was that he had always wanted to protect her. It happened suddenly. He said he was no hero and would choose her in any situation, but when he recalled her past, he decided to do something good so she could forget it and return to his arms. Asadi had already decided he would tell her his true feelings if he won the battle, and he revealed that he fought harder. Even though it felt unlikely he would achieve it. Her belief had been driving him all along, and she had already confessed just as he was about to. Without hesitating, he pulled her into his arms and held her tightly against him. They hugged as they shared the feelings in their hearts. They both showed a clear sign of love for the first time. They stepped a bit forward to hand each other a bright quiche. It was their first time, and their hearts were aligned. After a while one morning, the soldier's captain came to visit him. He pointed out that it was already noon. It was expected since he was in very bad shape when he finally returned. Asagi realized it had all happened because the time he spent with the lady flew by in the blink of an eye. The captain suddenly remembered something. She then asked to tag along with him whenever he could walk to the guild. It was all over the news that those guys were looking for him right now. An uneasy feeling settled over him because he already expected the guild master to summon him. Asadiu wanted to go to the task right away, but when he stood there, he realized he truly couldn't walk. The soldier was deeply moved after seeing his courage and resolved to fight 2 dragons at once without trying to run. As he offered his usual handshake, it was stiff rather than firm. There he was, feeling a little pain. As they walked toward the guild, Asagi told Daniella all the details. The story described what happened in the battle with the dragon and reached the scene where he returned from the forest, clinging to his suit to reach the main gate. Daniella said it happened when she returned. The caretaker told her about his condition. As soon as he entered the guild, everyone there was really into him. The adventurer who had been there before lunch stepped in front of Asagi to ask if he was all right, and he was very happy to see Asagi alive. If not, he could not have forgiven himself, Daniella. After introducing yourself, thank them for helping him during the expedition. Rex explained they all helped one another, which is why they succeeded. The tank, the human who had been taking care of the whole party, would be okay. It was going to cost them a bit too much to cover his medical expenses. In some debt, they began intense training to rebuild the team's coordination. Asagi wanted to split whatever reward he would get from the expedition. Rex was devastated because he couldn't believe that, even after killing the dragon alone, he was willing to share the rewards. He wasn't ready to accept it. Asagi saw them as the ones who started the first battle. He said in his own words that he was the only one who finished it. Acknowledging that these men had also helped, he issued a final proclamation after a while. Daniella chose to step in until the other adventurer, though. He refused to accept defeat in any situation, so he should withdraw from any debate. To the other man, he seemed kind and stubborn. Meanwhile, Rex could also read it immediately. The comment clearly wasn't a compliment, and somehow Asagi wasn't pleased. Someone interrupted the conversation to say the guild master was waiting to meet him alone. He was led alone to the guild master's office, and after a knock. Arriving, he found the gloomy man sitting in a chair, clearly in a bad mood. Master Ordo welcomed him into the Adventurers Guild and introduced himself. Asagi got a bad vibe from him and felt extremely nervous. This time Daniella helped tidy up as well. Both introduced themselves and offered to sit while they remained seated. Being on the other side of the table made them feel they were in an interview. The person sitting in front gave a faint sense of resemblance. They reconfirmed that he was the red elf due to the color of his skin and the aura he gave off. Hordo agreed and said he had inherited his powers from his ancestors, but for now he looked more like a human because he had not lived for thousands of years. The conversation was finally over, and the man stood still. He stepped into the light and sat in front of Asagi to confirm whether he had really defeated a dragon. The shift in character was abrupt, and Asagi reacted positively, though he still felt a bit nervous. The guild master immediately told him to drop the formal tone, saying his achievements were far from ordinary and that he was far above simply deserving respect. The guildmaster must not assume that everything about this was normal just because he alone severed the monster's head with an ancient elven sword. It would be wrong for him to take all the credit. On the other hand, Danielle acted as if she were being praised for her family's achievement. The master now wanted every detail, so he immediately ordered him to explain them. It seemed to be a rule. Asagi had no choice, so he decided to give everything, but he refused to give the forest wolf's legs. After telling the whole story and defeating the monster, he somehow crawled to the main gate and ended up back at the end. The guildmaster remained unconvinced because something was bothering him. Pulling out the paper, he set it before him to check again why he hadn't mentioned the forest wolf's legs in the complete scenario. This caught him completely off guard. The master now had a copy of his status plate, which showed everything in the adventurer's logs. The guildmaster wanted more than information about it. He wanted to know whether it had been deliberate. He tried to act gloomy again, and when I looked at his face, seeing there was no choice, he decided to tell the truth. He said a monster gave him this ability, but he was not ready to share the details. According to him, someone warned that revealing this would draw attention and become a much heavier burden for him. At that moment, Asaju could not undo his earlier magic, and the guildmaster was also investigating the situation. Realizing the man was mostly right, he thought taking it out might cause him more than just trouble. Believing he could do many things beyond his program, the guildmaster was always ready when others asked him to serve as a tool to work on their records, whether for the family or the military. This master was completely different, and he eventually told him that being an adventurer. Now he was completely free to live however he wanted, with nothing to hold him back. The guildmaster told the Sagi this is a normal part of life. When someone gets into trouble, everyone must come together to solve the problem. That statement surprised the Sagi one, but only for a moment. His partner placed her hands on his shoulder, and he felt quite relieved. The guildmaster wanted to use the authority granted to him. After offering a weak excuse, he finally decided to give him a nickname styled as the ultimate authority, Silver Green. Daniella found this quite amazing. Still, Asagi found it embarrassing to put up with at first. The guildmaster now decided to contact every branch in the country to let them know. Asagi had no interest in any of it. Others felt differently. Daniella also wanted the nickname. This time, though he did not look very excited, he gave her the nickname Light Wind. As a girl, she loved it to the fullest and continued to love it afterward. When the party left the room, they were named Silver, Green, and Light Wind. They discussed how different the guildmaster really was and agreed that what he was saying made sense. From then on, they knew they could live freely without any restrictions. Asagi stood lost in thought and reached a final conclusion. The Neologus smiled, and tragedy entered his life. Again, the guild receptionist from the previous town spoke with him inside the guild. Once again, she clung to him, trying to hold onto him. It worried her more when he went off alone to fight a dragon. When Asagi confirmed he had come through the battle unharmed, she was genuinely delighted. Once again, he had to give her a simple summary of the whole story. Some people were already waiting for him at the reception table. During the conversation, Asagi immediately went to find the girl from the day before, thanked him for any trouble he had to deal with because of her. He was relieved that the woman stayed safe, and she was alone because she had been separated from her group. He told her to be more careful from then on and never to let the party go. However, when the little girl passed, you will. He pointed out he was the first to go off alone without the party. The original party that took on the quest got in touch with a Saudi and they thanked him for any help he had given in saving their lives. As usual, his main concern was the tank that took the direct hit. They told him that with the money they could give him the best treatment in town. Now he was resting on his own bench. Saji wanted the visitor list so he could visit him, but he had to do something first. They decided to take care of the reward, money, immediately. Altogether, they were given 140 gold coins and some silver to split between both parties. The party had already taken care of it and handed him the pouch filled with all the coins. When Asagi opened it, he wasn't ready to accept it, because it was a little more than you expected. Rex was finished with the division and would not accept any objections on the matter. Asagi was about to say something, but chose to agree on that part. With no other option, he took the bag and everything was settled. They shared some pleasant moments, and now Asagi had more than. He asked friends to look after him in case something went wrong. Asagi planned to visit the injured tank and then go to the armor shop. As the boy's partner, Daniella decided to tag along. They decided to visit on the same day. Their plan had always been scheduled to get armor. When he arrived, he found Danny was doing fine. Scars still marked his belly from taking the dragon's breath head-on. After a while they left and wished him a speedy recovery. After seeing the condition of a person who had barely escaped, Daniella became more concerned about Asahi. Asahi vowed to be more thoughtful and careful later in life. There the lady stood, filled with many overwhelming expressions. She told him that if he died, she would be alone again and have nothing left to live for in this new world. She already knew Asahi would give his life to save others, however. She wanted him to focus on his own life while still thinking of her. As she said all this, her ears and face turned red. He promised to think before acting on his own or on impulse. She flushed a little when Asahi mentioned something out of nowhere. The woman put her mask back over her eyes to hide it. Her ears were visible and red, showing the condition she was in. Asahi and the woman then visited one of the restaurants where he went to look for everyone. They found Rex and his companions already in the middle of a celebration. Now they all sat around the dining table, wrapped in the atmosphere that surrounded them. A member of the party immediately asked Daniella to teach an archery class. Daniella refused at once, saying tomorrow would not work. The adventurer looked confused because she had plans for the next day, yet denied it and kept saying the next day would not work. The adventurer realized it was likely alcohol and that she might lose control because her face was completely flushed. Feeling embarrassed, she stopped the conversation. Asahi spared no effort in making her even more embarrassed. The following day at the hotel, Asahi waited outside for Daniella to arrive, while repeatedly telling her to calm down. On the last day when she arrived, he checked again that they were both serious about going on a date. The specifics of what they planned to do were similar to what they did each time. This time it was different. They were going as lovers, and as he spoke those words, his heart raced much faster than before. The robber stared at him. His body reacted very differently. He couldn't reflect on his thoughts and behaved gloomily. At that moment, Daniella stepped up behind Asahi. When he turned around, she was wearing the cute dress they had bought that day, and he noticed. While Asahi got all nerdy, he couldn't really think of what to say about it. After a short conversation, they both realized they were nervous about going on the date. Asahi kept forcing himself not to be overwhelmed by the woman's cuteness, which outshone everything else. He wanted to take a picture but couldn't document it. However, the woman thought it meant she wasn't pretty. Asahi screamed immediately to make clear that whatever she was thinking wasn't good and that she looked amazing. Giggling, Daniella was pleased by the compliment. This expression was even cuter for Assad to keep. Bluntly, she pulled the saggy thing so it came alongside. Both of them finally started their day, as they usually did when they hung out. Today it looked very bright. The city felt more alive than ever. Daniella either pretended or genuinely seemed completely unfazed as they grew hungry. They chose to eat at a specific place. The fancy cafe posed no problem. Both decided to sit around the table and eat their feast. However, Asahi couldn't make any eye contact. He walked to the ordering area and went for this, eating a sandwich while loving the atmosphere. As he walked back to his own table, he found Rex sitting, dozing in the chair as if he were falling asleep. He woke up with his Saji's words and a clear F. Being in a good mood could explain it. He told Rex he was there with Daniella, and from the look on Rex's face, he had already announced they were on a date. Asahi struggled to accept it. His face told the whole story, and Rex calmed him, stopping any further mockery. Rex needed to be somewhere, so he left immediately. John realized he meant to tell everyone about it. As he left, John returned to his table and told Daniella what had happened when Asahi ran after seeing him, and she said he would spread rumors about them. His face showed he was clearly uncomfortable with jokes about him dating such a beautiful woman. Still, he put on a tough act and denied this. Without warning, he started talking about staying with her forever. Daniella said up front that they were from different races and that she was an elf. She had a long time left and checked again whether they would look ahead, aware of the difference. Assad confirmed it wasn't a concern, and the moment became quite romantic. They were just about to quiche. As usual, the waitress interrupted and drained all the excitement. While they were eating their sandwich and asagi, seeing the woman's face, he knew it brightened Daniella's mood. After lunch, they left, holding hands this time, saying they would not be separated. Still, he felt pretty embarrassed about it. Danielle's last memory of holding hands was with her father. Worried, he suddenly asked whether her parents had a grave back in her hometown. After leaving home, Daniella had built one, but she hadn't had a chance to return yet. Now Asadi was finding a way for them to go there and pay their respects. Again, they arrived at the paw armor shop. The shopkeeper recognized him. His armor was prepared for the day. Asadi also brought the coat to cover it. The shopkeeper stayed interested in his story about his identity for a few days. He remained calm as he announced he had come to kill a dragon, which stunned the shopkeeper. In the end, he probably relied entirely on Asadi and assumed everything Asadi said was true. Asadi took pride in saying that, despite being badly wounded, he had somehow managed to cut off its head. Because he was more interested in finding the armor, the shopkeeper led him to it. A puppet was wearing it and looked adorable. Because of the thing with Kate, the shopkeeper clarified that once he finished assembling everything, his wife, the woman who owns the clocking store next door, said it looked unbalanced, then she worked to prepare it. Things were looking good, however. The shopkeeper wasn't going to charge for anything extra. It was added without consent. The outfit matched his silver-green nickname, and the shopkeeper added a bonus after confirming an enchantment that boosted his agility. Asadi wanted to add extra enchantment to the dress beyond the required fees. The shopkeeper agreed after saying it would take some time to be ready. They didn't accept any individual requests. Enchantment magic was in high demand, so they limited it to a demand-based system, making it extremely rare. His stinginess with the first costume had consequences. Asadi was ready to purchase it after asking the total cost. All enchantments included, the total was 70 gold coins. The shopkeeper thanked them for their patronage as the deal was locked in. They decided to go out while the shopkeeper was completely settled in. The lady's attire looked as beautiful as ever. To show him, she even took a detour. Once again, Asadi was charmed by the cuteness. Examining the clothes, he instantly knew they came from the Goblin Boutique. The shopkeeper was more interested in looking around it. The man just made a quick round trip around the liddy. Although it seemed he was trying to figure out the linen. Somehow he found himself beneath the cloth and was about to touch it when Asadi was displeased, called him an idiot, and told him to step aside. Daniel liked the jealousy coming from him while he acted like the model of the moment. While John tried to make his position clear. The shopkeeper was into fashion and clothes. Asadi suggested he visit the Goblin Boutique in person. However, with the woman present, everyone was afraid of it. They tried to calm down and finally continued the conversation. Since it was closed, they both left. Evening was already approaching. The day passed in the blink of an eye, and no one realized what time it was. Daniella spent the whole time teasing him, praising his company and saying how time flew when she was with him. Those compliments lit up Asadi's face. With Red, she acted gloomy and decided not to hold back because she was the one who started. Slowly, he leaned in toward her lips. He gave her a cute quiche, and after that, he walked on as if nothing had happened, and called it a revenge competition. But Daniella was not happy at all and planned to retaliate. He ran out as fast as he could. A week had passed before they realized it. They spent the money he earned from slaying the dragon and likely embarrassed each other more than once during that time, while Asadi didn't bother to explain. However, on Daniella's face, it was obvious what they were doing on the bed. Asadi kept calling Daniella pretty, beautiful, and cute. He moved around the room playing with her, praising her body and calling it pretty perfect at this. From that moment, she was the only person he could think about. After a week, they were finally ready to have their moment. They were always together, and she often stayed in his room. They seemed to have really realized their feelings for each other. He knew Daniella had been alone for years, and managed to grasp the feeling to some extent. His late-night conversations with random customers were always superficial and meaningless. Back at work, he had to act cheerful while working in the shop. Conversations with coworkers were only brief greetings. Everything changed the moment she came back and stepped on his stomach. The previous week showed how beautiful his life had become after he came to this world. As Asadi lay down on the bed, he covered his face with a pillow. The smell of Daniella's hair on it made him realize. He remembered her in everything that was in harmony. He called her name and toyed with the pillow the way he used to with her. She somehow entered the room, finding him unattended in that situation. It seemed she was especially happy with it. Furious, she told him he had to leave the room within 5 minutes because they had a meeting the next day. Asaji felt dazed the moment she walked off, struck by how insulting her true meaning was. Treating the 5-minute threat seriously, he pulled himself together in no time, reached down, and it was about time. They decided to head out. This was the day they would finally pick up the armor from the shop. When they arrived, the shopkeeper gave his greetings clearly, confirmed that the armor was already prepared. When Asaji saw the outfit, it struck him as both beautiful and amazing. The equipment matched his title of Silver Green perfectly. He went straight to a fitting room to try it on, and as he was dressing, Danielle felt something in her heart she couldn't put into words at the trial hour. He changed into his own clothes, went and reconfirmed the dress with Daniella. She had no chance to speak. Another woman came up from behind and praised it. I find it far better than anything else. The girl and the shopkeeper were from the cloth shop. He was pleased that the lady liked it. It was his wife's work at midnight. The shopkeeper's wife had gone through all the changes. Somehow Asaji really liked it. The girl was happy that Asaji did not refuse. Despite several forceful changes, Asaji persisted. They clarified that it looked too good. Then remember the compliment that was missing. Daniella gave him one, confirming she had fallen in love with him again. The outfit made him happy. What he was wearing made her smile again. He wanted to hug her more desperately, while remembering the night before when he finally got her to let go. The shopkeeper did not like the look he was giving. Who could see what he was really planning? Asaji decided to walk it off with a beautiful girl at his side, determined not to get carried away and to set out on a quest. Asaji moved through the shop and noticed the t-shirt that had been there earlier was already sold at the auction. It sold for over 1,000 gold coins. Now Asaji understood the value when the whole dragon was sold for 100 gold coins. That was far too little for the risk of killing a dragon and entirely unworkable. With everything settled, it was time for them to head out. The merchant still thanked him for the demonstration he gave the other day about the t-shirt, which increased its value several times. Asaji was simply hoping the shop would grow further there. The caretaker offered him a respectful wave. As he walked down the street, children were playing him as the hero when he saw them. It was a delight to watch. As they entered the market, overall they found it fairly peaceful, and the town was bustling for the most part. It felt more appealing with his beautiful girlfriend walking beside him. Most of the time Danielle stayed calm and collected, but sometimes she dropped her composure and clung to him. Whenever this happened, people always paid attention to them. He found the whole thing cute. The piece was quite nice, so they decided to go on a quest. By then, she had already gripped him tightly. He spotted the guild, but the moment they entered, they discovered that the female receptionist from earlier they stood to greet them, but did not look very happy. A furious glance stopped Asaji from finishing the sentence she was about to say. The receptionist wanted to ask what was going on between them because they were standing so close. She could tell they had a strong attachment to each other. She wasted no time and pulled him away for a while. Daniella seemed unwilling to let her boyfriend's hand go to another woman. A fight was about to start. The group decided to sit around the table and discuss it privately in a closed cabin. An awkward silence fell between the two women. While he was stuck in the middle with that side, he had nothing to say and never expected in his life that this situation would arise. The receptionist stared with a scornful expression, and Asaji remained silent. In the end, he could not. As he began to explain, Daniella immediately interrupted and said there was no need to try to pull. Saji stepped closer to hand him a bright quiche in front. Suddenly, it shook Letty's desire to break into pieces. Neither of them stopped at all, and it continued for a while until the receptionist could no longer understand what was really happening between them. Both Asaj and Daniella were blushing. They stared into each other's eyes without breaking eye contact, like falling into romantic love. Then they turned to the receptionist to tell her they were now in a relationship, and that was the complete explanation. The receptionist turned to Asagia and stared, though Asagia had meant to tell her earlier. He apologized and said his heart belonged to the lady. He chose to be with Daniella without hesitation. The receptionist looked gloomy, and her eyes gave away the real story. She now admits it was her own mistake for not doing the right thing at the right time because she preferred him over every other male candidate in the previous town. Daniella clarified that even though she had enjoyed her time with him, she chose to wait for the right time to tell. Asagi recalled saying, while they rested together, that she wasn't good at understanding her own feelings. Either way, she would not regret the decision she had just made. By saying that, Assad, you pulled her in once again, gave a bright keech and things kept going. He remembered that those words had made her more important to him, and he wasn't going to choose anyone over her. Daniella told the receptionist the whole tragic story of how her parents were killed in a dragon stampede and how she had been alone until this man entered her life. Everything changed when she realized the true feelings hidden in her heart. Nobody could stop him, not even her, and now she knew she would never let him go. The receptionist decided to move on from her feelings. If so, she clarified, she would have no further issues. She looked like she was about to cry. She chose to walk away to avoid showing her ugly side. Asagi felt terrible when he realized he had been so disrespectful to other people's feelings. Without waiting a second, decided to head back. As he left, the receptionist told him not to look sad, since there was nothing more to discuss. Stepping out the door, he called to him again and promised they would be friends from then on until the end of their lives. The receptionist accepted it and agreed to the discussion. When they left Daniella, she held John's hand to show that he could read the thoughts in his mind at that moment. She insisted again that she had no intention of letting him go and that he belonged only to her heart. Her tone sounded too controlling. Asagi couldn't understand why he was upset, because he was sensing what the woman inside was doing. Rather than wait, it went to the quest board to decide how they would spend the day. They had a hard time deciding which option met their requirements. They chose the extermination category because they'd already killed the grass wolves and planned to fight the kobolds next. At that moment, someone called to him from behind. Turning, he saw the big man he had bumped into on his first day in the city. He was also impressed by this guy's ability to take down a dragon on his own. Asagi did not take all the credit and gave some of it to the party. Hanzaro couldn't help laughing because, present that day, he gathered the soldiers to go collect the collectibles, making clear this was not just a major assist, but that he essentially took it down himself. The moment felt both embarrassing and teasing. The adventurer also said that this conversation had been going on at the soldier gates the whole time. This helped bring more adventurers to the city for the battle. Hinsoro went there to stretch his limbs and pick up the day's quests involving the boy's new armor. It looked very good and matched his outfit, and the man could read that armor like an open book, clarifying that the material consisted of a hero who had stopped a stampede caused by a dragon. Asagi confirmed it right away and called it a worthy purchase. The boy told him to choose a quest immediately, or he would not be able to return before nightfall. He chose to take the Grass Wolf quest himself. They remembered that the party had never fought kobolds. They decided easily and accepted the quest. Remove it from the board. He decided to give it to the receptionist to register. Their assigned spot was outside the east gate, and the status card was issued. Now they were given the quest. They both left through the eastern gate. It was a bright day with only plains and no mountains. They made their way along a path through the woods. They found it quite peaceful, using their detection skill. Daniella explained that some goblins were playing nearby. Despite being interested in seeing it, they started walking and soon reached a rocky area. An hour had already passed. Apparently this place was a mine, but it was abandoned long ago. Now it has become a den for monsters. Asagi took out a lantern and went inside. This was the perfect time to test the armor he wore. As soon as he stepped inside, this place was more than just dark, he realized. He could not see ahead, which was expected since the place was already abandoned. Daniella asked him to use the presence detection skill to notify when something was in front. He clarified there were many, but none of them were close enough for that. Asagi stepped forward and somehow gripped the woman's arm. Admit they feel embarrassed, then apologize. It looked like a frightened boyfriend clinging to a comforting girlfriend. She just asked him to remember this as they walked through the town. They were just moving forward and now understand how. By that time, having no light was much harder than they had expected. They had already been trying for an hour to find a way out of the tunnel. He realized the tunnels were too complex to understand on his own. Upon reaching the destination, Asagi was informed by Den. They were very close and had to get going. He saw a light all around him and realized that one of the kobolds was only 10 meters away. Slipping behind a corner, they saw some of them eating lunch, sitting at a dining table to eat. They were quite far away. They could only see it from one of the corners, and decided to rely on speed to rush toward, deny them any chance to retaliate. Asagi thought this was the right way. With Daniella at the back, it would be easy to control once they were both ready. They rushed forward at once to get them, while the others were still enjoying their meal. Asagi moved very quickly. The rush bore his name, and the magic woven into his armor made him naturally fast. At the start of the battle, Asagi was facing one of the monsters. Meanwhile, the other was being handled by the woman at the back, using her arrows. Asagi noticed Daniella was as impressive as ever. He wanted to check how well the gear was holding up. He realized the block attacks were deflected completely, without a scratch. Now move on to the leg guards. First, he tried to knock one of the monsters off balance, then kicked it with his leg. The impact was far more intense than he expected, because that monster was now just a splash of blood. Using that kind of equipment on the body amused him. Daniella stepped out from behind after defeating all the monsters. They bumped fists. They seemed to have completed their quest. They had to collect the left hands. By the time they finished 4 exterminations, seeing they were not very challenging, Asagi felt he was fighting a huge monster. He kept trying to show off, and Daniella made it clear she would not flatter him because he'd already fought a dragon. He kept thinking about spending the night together and was interested. They knew it would be possible as long as they did not get lost in the tunnel. At worst, they might be camping there overnight, and Asagi had already brought a barrier and extra food for the day. The choice felt grim, and he planned to rest in a tree if it came to that. They decided to head out for now. Moving down the path, they used their presence detection to find the remaining monsters, and the deeper they went, the more monsters appeared. Finally, they decided to camp out for the night, and by the day they had a round set and leather bags filled with hands. Now Daniella felt tired too. They decided to set up the barrier. Asagi carried a small stone table draped with a clean cloth. Meals were also prepared in an instant. Now she enjoyed sitting beside Asagi. He remembered the first time he met her. When her stomach growled, he served her food, and he never imagined they'd come this far, eating side by side like a couple. Asahi's dish looked much better than hers, so she asked him for a bite right away. Asagi is happy, treated her like a sweet boyfriend. This looked like a romantic relationship. Eventually, he fed all his food to her, and they were finished. Asagi decided to cover the night duty while she went back to rest. While she rested, he gently rubbed her head. A pleasant sensation spread through his body. A single chill came, and he had to protect this resting face. As expected, while Daniella rested, some kobolds approached, and Asagi decided to test his ice skill. Rather than rely on the barrier, he used magic, and it seemed to be working perfectly. His magic froze their legs far faster than before. He could test himself and his control, and they had no chance against him. 3 of the monsters were completely stuck and could not move. Angry, they decided to scream. They believed they could shake off Asagi. Asagi remained calm and cut off their heads with a single strike. They had to take them down in one go, which left a pretty miserable situation. They really could not use any of the material on their body because of the magic he had just used. He then decided to let only the hands continue on their way when he returned to the camp. He found Daniella already awake and curious where he'd gone. He said he was handling some of the monsters on his own for now. Completely absorbed by the romantic figure, Asagi gave himself over to it. He turned to the woman and explained he was a little exhausted. Immediately decided to squeeze down on it. Using some balloons to shake off his exhaustion, he acted like a total pervert, and as he played with her, he slowly came back to his senses. Morning had already arrived, but the surrounding darkness made it hard to tell. They decided to pack up and head back. Heading back meant getting more involved in the expedition. Daniella kept marking the spot so they could return easily and without trouble. She believed it would not cause a collapse because she had marked the exact spot with the correct angle. Daniella couldn't wait to go inside. Exploring the place as fully as she could delighted her. 2 hours had already gone by. Without warning, a monster burst out of the wall, startling them. Still, Asagi cut off its head with a single strike. Asagi noticed something as Or fell. After confirming with the woman that, although the place had been abandoned because of a lack of resources, he thought that might not be true. Now that he mentioned it, I agree. Also came to understand that the tunnel was unusually deep for a mining operation, and it took him a while to realize just how significant that depth was. One major assumption is that the creatures that created it caused this death. To be clear, this was not the work of a single person. Only one thing was clear: an army might be deep inside the tunnel. He considered turning back, knowing there might be much harsher things waiting for them inside. Daniella understood the impact and agreed to go back. Keep in mind, these monsters were not like goblins that breed quickly, and there could be a huge wager if someone could control them with one hand. Right now, they could only see the footprints of a single monster, which meant this place was probably overflowing with cobalt. Isagi was trying to connect the dots and realized the monsters were present in large numbers and also above ground. That suggested they might be planning something. The only thing that was clear was that the city was in serious trouble. After taking it all in, he turned and told them. It was clear they couldn't go back and leave the city at risk, so they had to do something about the monsters. He realized it was their best chance to stop the stampede. Now they knew the new adventure's goal, and coming here had only been to test new equipment. From then on, they would head into the deepest part of the cave. He put away his iron sword and continued fighting with his ice sword. Fortunately, both party members were on the same page, so she wasn't worried about lacking a real weapon. Now he was calling her the wife of his heart, completely overwhelmed with emotion. Up ahead there were sounds, but they were not cobalt. Moving forward, they found Mulch, trying to eat a few of the monsters, and saw it as a perfect opportunity. Isagi swung his ice sword and cut off the monster's head, starting a new, genuine quest. The mole passed on to the next world immediately. Isagi did not know its real name and was calling it whatever came to mind. Not wanting them to use it as proof of subjugation, Daniella clarified the real name and grabbed 3 of the claws. Isagi then cut and gathered the evidence. After he finished, they decided to go deeper into the tunnel. They had been walking for some time. After they fought the mole, the path ran up and down in a zigzag all over the place. They would have taken down many more monsters, but they left them in place because they were serving as either holes made by moles or mole worms. One was an ugly blood bat, and the other was a rock hunter monster. When they showed up, Isagi took them all down. They continued killing them, counting as they moved deeper. None of the monsters were causing him any problems. Since they would be staying there for a while, Isagi set up a barrier to protect them from anything that might appear. It was important for their expedition that they take rest in the right. Adjust the amount so it would not cause them any problems as they went ahead. Isagi shivered when he noticed an awkward presence in one corner. Then he ran to Daniella to let her know about it. Daniella, on the other hand, was impressed by his intuition and detection skills. She smiled brightly and told him this was a great flow of mana. She clarified that, just like waterways, people also flow along underground paths called dragon veins. Even though they were inside a dragon vein, they were not. It sat near the main one, and she believed it was a distributor. Isagi now wondered when and how this had been discovered in his previous life. He reconfirmed whether there was an issue because they were already in the middle of it. Daniella clarified that staying there for a long time would likely have some impact. It was like recharging, but another way to store it was to breathe in the dragon vein's deposits. She asked him to treat it as a native one. The dragon vein's interior contained a positive force, so it should not have any negative effect anytime soon. Isagi realized too much of this could turn medicine into poison, so he left it at that. They decided to rest, since they would be of no use without it. They planned to reach the bottom and finish the job by the next day. He needed to rest first. The watch changed halfway through the night and continued into the next day. Despite forcing their way through many monsters, they grew tired as they went deeper because they kept facing more monsters. As planned, they rolled the slain monsters to one side and moved on. He had reservations about putting himself in danger, so their only option was to go deeper. He felt a strange, hidden pleasure as he killed more monsters and moved deeper inside. He planned to do it to prevent a stampede, but he ended up enjoying it fully. Standing silent at one of the corners, he wondered whether something was wrong with him. Daniella went over to him and listened as he said he was having fun right now and was enjoying himself despite their situation. Explaining the whole situation, he said that on the first day she rested, he went out, used his magic to kill some monsters, and he'd been happy about it ever since. He feared what would happen if he became a cruel person. Until today, he felt nothing when they used to take down some of the monsters, but things had changed. Getting some new equipment might explain why he felt so elated after killing some of the monsters. Worried he looked. He looked at Daniella and was delighted to see her cute, smiling face. She made clear that in her eyes, he was a very good and kind person. He was clearly not cut out to be an adventurer. To make it clear, she told him she was enjoying it too. She explained that every feeling they had while killing monsters and going deeper into the tunnel mirrored his bloodlust. Once again, she confessed that she truly loved him. At that moment, she gave him a bright, warm hug. She clarified that, even so, their actions were a massacre. They had no real choice because it was necessary. She told him they intended to protect the city and the people who lived there. If they were enjoying this, it showed the true nature of an adventurer. Adventurers are eager to discover what awaits around the next corner. Saju could now see how wonderful it was to think about all that and to go out. Continuing to hug him, she said he was not an evil person because he was her lover, his thoughts, and everything. This couldn't be evil. They both confessed their feelings to each other again. After everything, Asadi felt relieved and pulled back. She did not like that because she wanted to hug him a little longer. He patted her on the head and thanked her for what she had done. He kept fighting, convinced he was protecting someone, and had been doing so until now. He chose to honor every life he took. He knew he could not save everyone or everything, and he was a pacifist. From then on, he chose to do what was right. Go kill the monsters to stop the stampede. They decided to move forward because the steps were usually interesting and still were. The situation was getting serious. I had to take out an elf because from that point on, a situation could become more serious. He planned to get as much as he could from the weapon and decided to go all out without stopping. They moved deeper into the cave. He felt something, and this time it did not come from the dragon vein. Daniella also noticed something there that was moving. They looked at each other. They decided to go deeper inside. They began a massacre there, cutting everything in their path in two. Eventually, after some time, at last they reached a huge room. Curious about the place, they called it the ceiling, and he couldn't see the bottom. A whole horde of monsters stood on the other side. Seeing their numbers, Asagi finally understood. This would cause major problems if they decided to start a stampede into the city. Realizing this was the only chance, he believed they could use the ancient weapon to carry it out. At that moment, Daniella had a different intention and reached out her hand. Thinking of using something, someone acted, while Asagi was confused about why she had put the sword away. The woman seemed to channel magic into her fist. However, Asagi said the amount was immense. Casting the spell, she named it Blast Buster. It was an extremely powerful kind of magic launched at the target. All the monsters were wiped out with a single strike. Asagi stood speechless because he had never seen anything like it, since it was Daniella's own spell. She explained that gathering so much wind in her hand before releasing it made it hard to control, but she knew it would give her immense power. At the other end, some surviving monsters waited. Without hesitation, they all lunged forward to take them down. As Asagi and Danielle took those down, another presence engulfed them. Both of them immediately became alert. They remembered the same feeling from when they last faced the monster wolf. It became clear to him that it was a monster that had evolved unnaturally after absorbing a huge number of men. Based on his observation, it had a slight cobalt tint and was less normal than expected. Daniella realized that if this was an evolution, that must be an assault cobalt. It was a fast, agile monster that targeted a fence. It approached them at an incredible speed. He expected it within seconds. Asagi wondered which of them was faster right now. He could make out a faint path leading to one of the corners. At the far end of the dome, its size and speed made her expect it to appear there. They had no time to set up a trap or give it a clear signal. They launched a ball of lightning immediately. That's when they saw the monster, which looked strange yet incredibly powerful, and it did not budge at all when it saw them. Humans, the monster declared that they were in his country and later. He clarified that this was the Cobalt Nation and that he was its king. It was a cobalt assault. Neither of the adventurers had a counterattack or an opening to take it down. They introduced themselves as adventurers and said they had expected a stampede to come from the tunnels. That was why they decided to come inside before that could happen. Asadi was somewhat mocking the assault cobalt, which strongly objected to the statement and his proclamation and was very angry about them. Becoming completely furious and reacting immediately, rushed in to attack at high speed. Asagi chose to intercept it first. Start by using the sword. It was attacking at great speed and went after the man. They managed to dodge it somehow. Asagi searched for an opening to strike it from behind. However, the instant he turned to touch it with his sword, the monster was gone when he checked. The assault kobold began targeting Daniella first, knowing she served as backline support. The lady tried her best to stop him from moving any further. Finding another opportunity, Asaj lunged forward to attack it from behind. However, just as he was about to deliver, the monster vanished in front of him again. It was much faster than any monster they had faced so far. That monster was moving very fast. Each time Asadi saw a chance to strike, the monster dodged it as if it were nothing. During one strike, he was poised to plunge the sword into its heart from behind. Yet the ESL Cobalt mocked him again, moving out of range at his previous speed. This time it didn't just dodge, but tried to attack him from behind, delivered a terrifying threat to him as a strike, which Daniella did not like, and she tried to shield him with her arrow. That slight strike was easy to dodge with a single move. He did just that, angry at being attacked from both sides. It used another subordinate's corpse to catch Daniella off guard. By this time, all three had scattered, with Asagi on the ground in pain. Trying to show off its power, the assault kobold said the man would be the first target, then the woman. Immediately, he pulled out his shark claws and aimed them at Asagi. Danielle was stunned to see the claw, which they had never noticed before. That monster unleashed a powerful, merciless slashing Asagi. It was far more intense than it looked, since it could cut through the available rocks. Asagi somehow used the wolf's leg skill to dodge and move away. They both realized this was a real monster. The assault kobold wasn't finished, and before it could strike again, Yella asked Asadi to pick her up and keep dodging. Asagi obeyed the command. He consistently dodged every slash the fierce monster sent. They realized this man was using multi-dimensional magic all at once. The void bag used the same magic, dimensional magic that disrupted time and space. That meant he could attack them instantly, no matter the distance. Rather than directly targeting them with his claws, he used them to perform a kind of magic that attacked and warped space. She made clear that if they had been standing where the claws were aimed, they would have died. It was an immense power, though not easy to understand. This had real significance for evolution. Angrier now, the monster prepared to take them both down at once. They already had a plan to counter it. Now Asaju moves at high speed, carrying the woman with his wolf legs in a zigzag. It made the monster angrier than they had expected. Each time it attacked, they kept dodging it as if it didn't matter. Dodging it was possible, but he couldn't keep moving at that speed forever. Daniella came up with a plan for him. She asked him to keep moving while she took it out. Asagi kept moving at the same speed as before. By this time, he was getting too close to the monster and risked making it angry. The assault kobold couldn't stay calm when it was just trying to dodge as best it could. Those slashes had no effect while he was just moving. He seemed to be taking his time. In an instant, an arrow flew straight for the monster's heart. Then Daniella came out from behind the rock. It was not a single strike, as multiple arrows followed and targeted him. This knocked that monster out as it fell back. A foul smell came from the assault kobold, and it seemed they had won the battle. They bumped fists to celebrate the victory, relieved that they had somehow managed. Everything seemed gone, then suddenly something interrupted them from the side. Attacked from behind, he immediately fell to the ground. As soon as he turned back, he looked toward where it came from. He noticed the monster still had some life left. It used dimensional magic to unleash a single claw slash from one finger. Daniella was furious at this pathetic, strange attack. She immediately fired her arrow, this time targeting the monster's head to take it down without preventing it from moving any further. Severe pain made Asagi groan. Letting his guard down was his own mistake. He could not understand how powerful that monster really was, since a single finger strike could cause so much damage. Daniella placed him on the floor to examine the wound. The moment she touched it, the guy screamed like a little kid. When Daniella checked, she asked him to be humble. His organs were not seriously damaged, and she would give him some initial treatment so he could stand. Daniella kept her emotions in check and said he could make it even without a healer. Assad was relieved that he would not die. This somehow handled their first aid using their medicines. The treatment was finally finished with a few potions and bandages. After the attack, Asagi sat on the floor, catching his breath and still alive. They decided to secure proof of subjugation before setting out. It was clear she was a workaholic the moment she returned. Asadi had already been arrested. The moment she woke him, he suddenly jumped out of nowhere and let out a small scream. Blood stained the woman's face when she returned after dismantling the monster alone. Saji apologized for the sudden scream and then went over to the woman to touch her face and clear it. The mess on top of it, to restore her former appearance. He tried to tell her that a small splash of blood on her face didn't look good, but otherwise she always looked beautiful. The lady couldn't take the compliment to heart and gave a small giggle. After saying everything and clearing up the mess, they rested side by side before heading back to the city. After a long period of rest, at last Daniella woke up, rubbing her eyes. She began watching for Asagi, assuming he was already gone. It was surprising that the guy was now at her feet, and she kept playing with him even after he was injured. With everything settled, they both chuckled and were sure it would not happen again. With no further damage, they decided to go down the tunnel the monster had come from. Remember, they were heading out. It was something she had always wanted, and after all, she had never been deep inside the earth before. Right beside the dragon vein, she realized there must be more interesting things ahead. Aware this could be dangerous, she refused to lead without first exploring. Moving forward, she saw one of the world's most mysterious sights. They could hardly believe it because so many crystals were visible right in front of them. They were purple, and Asagi was amused by the light and later came too. It was clearly some kind of magic ore. She had never seen one this big before. As she looked at it, she realized its color was that of dimensional magic, the same attribute the assault cobalt was using. It showed a color never seen by humans. Since it already behaved as multidimensional, it was expected to be rare in the natural world. This crystal was nearly as pure as the ore. None of them knew this thing could affect them or interfere with their mana circuits if they tried to touch it. Despite her long life, Daniella had never seen a crystal with such deep dimensional color, though she had heard that people once used dimensional crystals to teleport. Asagi thought about space and remembered a way to get out of there. Daniella didn't like it, so she asked him to stop talking. From her tone, she already knew that if they tried, they could be torn to pieces. The sight was very satisfying, and it's unlikely anyone would have made it this far into the tunnel. They realized how much wealth this treasure could bring them. Asadi wasn't that kind of person. He cared about the view rather than the amount, expecting both of them to remain safe and healthy from then on. Just as they were about to leave it behind, they noticed something. The crystal moved without warning. Nothing happened. It disappeared and reappeared as if its very existence wavered between this world and the next. When they stepped out of the tunnel, the bright light stung their eyes. They couldn't stand it and started cursing a lot. They had not seen any sunlight for the past 2 weeks. Eager to return to the city, they first took a bath because it had been a long time since their last one. They both decided to head back right away, even though their heads hurt badly. Just as they were reaching back, Asagi realized it was taking them almost 3 hours to cover the distance, twice as long as when they left. Hungry, they stopped at a food stall on the way. After a while, they were finally in a hot bath. They relaxed, a silent cheer of joy. Back in his room, Asaj sat drinking some tea. They remembered the help of a wealthy man who let them stay there for about that long. By paying for 2 weeks, he was covering all the expenses himself. Then she left him and stunned the lady. No words could capture his kindness, and they felt choosing this was the right decision. Someone knocked at the door. Daniella came in to discuss when they were. She was about to report to the guild because her outfit looked clumsy. Asagi knew he had to be a gentleman, so he simply said they would do it first thing in the morning. The woman went to her room to rest, wishing him good luck for tomorrow. Asagi felt completely surrounded by kindness, yet depressed from lying alone in bed. As soon as they returned to the guild, trouble began when the receptionist from before clung to him, angry that he disappeared without warning. When she learned they had both gone to the kobold tomb, she asked for a favor. They decided to discuss everything only with the guild master present. As important adventurers, they were immediately invited to meet the hilarious tremendous guy. As usual, he sat at his desk. It was his normal routine. Asagi said 2 weeks ago, they went out to test their new equipment in some tunnels. On the way back, they saved the city from a stampede after killing many cobalt monsters. The guild master listened to the whole story. He didn't look very happy about that. He told them they should have informed the guild before acting on their own, and though he was pretty angry, he let it go. They knew they had succeeded completely. He asked them to report this the next time they went on such a mission, and they warned him they would give him another embarrassing name if he could not. The guild master told him to get in touch, seek their advice, and stay with the guild whenever something like this came up. The master came to settle the reward and told him all the monster hands would be counted and sold in the market to pay him. However, for the rare monster materials he mentioned, he would give each of them their own price. They were also going to be paid for avoiding the stampede after getting deep into the tunnel. They both decided to wait happily for the reward. The guildmaster even told them they could use the monster's materials to make their equipment if they wanted. Because they were interested, the master arranged for them to meet a blacksmith employed directly by the guild who would handle everything. He even showed some samples of the blacksmith's work, including an impressive suit of armor that looked gaudy because it was made of red metal. The instant he remembered the red metal, he thought of the dimensional crystal, but chose not to mention it. All was settled, and word spread that the silver green and the light wind had stopped the stampede from entering the tunnel. It had already been 3 weeks. Meanwhile, he enjoyed his lunch with the woman. He opened his status for review. He discovered many things had improved since he last checked. He treated Daniella the same, and she was now at level 72 with some solid new skills. Far behind her, Asagi was lighting at 54. Both seemed close to leveling up to their current status. Rank A starts at level 73, and Asagi also decided to work hard to reach it. After spending long dark nights in the tunnel, Asagi developed night vision. This was one of the skills that let him see in the dark. This would be useful if they ran into trouble while camping. It was most likely linked to her unique skill, eye foliage. He recalled the blacksmith had been very understanding, even though at first he found him a little scary, but when he went back to visit, the man introduced himself as the Green Silver. Bennett the blacksmith did not seem happy about making a suit for him just because he had a nickname. He was ready to move to another one if he was about to suggest something and understood that if the guy had paid a visit, that means he must have come across something rare. Then it became so eager to see this thing that he immediately wiped away his serious expression. He then began begging for confirmation to proceed with his request. Daniella knew everything went well because he could immediately identify the quality of the cobalt parts. The blacksmith made a fang-and cloth sword from the materials because it was light, easy to swing, and suited as equipment. Making this item took him 2 weeks, and because she wanted it nearly perfect, Asagi gave him 3 weeks to finish. Taking the equipment contributed to acquiring it in the first place. Still, he wanted to spend some pleasant downtime with Daniella, so he decided to wait for him at the bar. The hero Yasushi Matsumoto was expected to arrive that day, and they did not want to miss the opportunity. It looked like a request from a Saudi, but she was ready to stand by him because she wanted something to eat. Saji understood that easily because the woman knew nothing about that guy. He could only imagine that the man was from Japan and might have been reincarnated or transferred there. He wanted to know why people saw him as a true hero after he personally stopped a dragon stampede. At that moment, the door opened. The whole bar turned to see if he had actually arrived. It was the hero, but he didn't seem fazed at all when he found out who it really was. She avoided being serious because it might make her eat the fish bones too. Asagi asked her not to do it because it could cause problems. They had a small fight because one did not want to see the hero while the other was eager to. He was in it while the man in the bar line came into the bar. "I apologize for the intrusion." Asagi pulled his attention away from the small coral and turned to see how he really looked. A young man wanted to meet people from the city's guilds. Just as he stepped inside, the aura around him was simply overwhelming. With everyone focused on him, Danielle was moved the moment she noticed the hero's hair was the same inky black as his. Yashishi now recognized a resemblance and looked to his side. Curious, he identified that man as the Silver Green. Asaj replied optimistically, welcoming him into the establishment. This is how they first met. By then they seemed like friends, enjoying themselves at the bar with drinks, while Daniella was not with him that day and was resting at the hotel. They seemed to have already swapped identities as people reincarnated into this new city. The hero even liked the shop, which served genuinely good alcohol. In his backstory, he was a high school student when a truck skidded and hit him on his way home from school, sending him there. The only difference between them was that their pasts came from very different lives. Since he had already been living like a hero in the protagonist's story, he remained at the center. Yashashi's incredible stats and powerful skills had earned him the title of hero, which made him almost invincible. Every woman on the street was naturally drawn to him. He behaved like a real man. The protagonist was moved by not being in that position. Reincarnated from another world, Yasashi still didn't think having a harem was a good thing. Always in trouble, he found that whenever he tried to fix it, more women gathered around him, even though all of them seemed pretty to him, and he felt bound to their hands and feet like a surprised old man. Both are questioning each other's choices. One was getting multiple and was unhappy, while the other was getting one. They remained unhappy. The human's anxiety felt like being in love with Yamjur's sisters, and it was just too much talk about getting a girl. Now Asagi believed that being by Daniella's side was enough for him. They became good friends, and Asagi planned to ruin his friend's reputation with his wife by saying certain things. At last, Asagi was happy to have someone from his own grounds to be friends with. The best thing was that every joke he made landed, and they had a good night together. Asagi considered it perfect. They decided to rest together under the silver sky. Yes, she also enjoyed the time at the bar, because it was his first time trying such good alcohol. They were only talking about how to reach the Silver Sky Hotel. The place was crowded with people, and when the camera zoomed in, many women were waiting for the hero to arrive. As soon as he arrived, everything began at once as the ladies watched everyone closely, and even Asagi came into view. A girl asked again whether he was also interested in joining them. Facing that was a little foolish for him. Although he believed he was good friends with the hero, their status was different, so he decided to end the night immediately. After they wished Asagi a very good night, she left. He immediately realized these men might not have wanted him there, and knew the hero should be in the middle. Everyone focused on him because his power far surpassed anyone else's, and he was showing his true nature. They spent the next couple of mornings at the Silver Sky eating breakfast together. Back at the dining table, Asagi mocked the hero about last night. That was embarrassing for him when someone said it directly to him. The hero had come to see the tunnel those guys went into. Rumors in the capital said the situation was becoming dangerous. That's why the king asked him to take a look. The king said he was an old man with parents like Santa Claus, and the joke landed. Asagi looked to the other side and saw Danielle. She also went along with the other women who came with the hero. She felt happy knowing it had been a very long time since this girl had been with other females. At that moment, he heard the woman mocking the time they had spent together. Her delivery felt a bit unsatisfying at first. After that, she clarified that things had changed, and they went through several rounds even with the low term, which caused no problems. Daniella said he also taught her useful techniques she hadn't known at first. While other women felt it was demeaning that the man did not have enough power to meet that lady's needs. Other women in the group had a different impression of the hero. Once again, the hero seemed to have won the battle without fighting. It was just girl talk, no different from what happened in her own life, that same day after eating breakfast twice. Then they returned to the tunnel where they had been living. Asagi agreed to do it because he was being paid the right amount. As they were getting inside, the hero used a little of his light magic to brighten it. The moment he acted, Asad was completely speechless and shocked to see that. He was impressed by the hero, and Asagi felt a little dumb, because all his magic helped coat the drink. Coming up from behind, Daniella immediately said this guy was more amazing than the hero, which surprised her. By now, Asagi realized his girlfriend was the only person in the world on his side. In the end, Daniella even praised the hero. Asagi realized again that they were really cool people. The women really lifted him up and then slammed him down. They moved deeper into the tunnel to explore what lay ahead. He remembered making an opening that led them deep inside and thought about it. A hero's subordinate stepped forward and blasted a hole with his magic. A dwarf told them. It turned out the hero had come alone to save them when monsters attacked the caves. She clearly remembered watching from behind as the man took down all the monsters with his sword-like vegetables. Even this young girl had fallen for the hero. He really looked like a pedophile. They pushed deeper, taking out monsters as they went. The play exposed more of the holes they had kept hidden last time. This is where the team defeated the assault kobold, as the hero assigned it a sight. Finding a way into the depths, he asked what was there. Asagi acted as if he were in tunnel land. He wanted to go deeper. After repeatedly asking for clarification, Asagi agreed to show him. They decided to go deeper inside. Arriving, the hero found it remarkable. The other two took it as praise, acting as if they had made it. After discussing it, they chose not to approach it because it was dangerous and agreed to keep it secret. He said it was the right call, otherwise it would have been a disaster. Asagi was relieved he had made the right choice and faced a danger that was clear in the hero's eyes. He said this was not something she could handle easily just because of his decision. He knew of a few people who could do it, but were not allowed to leave the castle because they were court mages. Asagi realized from the growing respect people showed this woman that she must be extremely powerful, and that was why she could not leave. They decided they had to leave immediately and could do nothing, while the hero said he could make a powerful spell from the materials, but it produced nothing. They shut down the investigation. The team chose not to report it and sealed it behind a steel door. Suddenly, the earlier dwarf stepped forward to seize the chance. In a blink, she formed an iron door and sealed it away. That was really impressive. They went back to the city and spent another week with the hero. It was nearly time for him to return to the capital. He had formed them at roughly the same time. Asagi was glad to have met him. Meeting someone from his own nation in another world was something he never expected. He felt the same way the first time a burglar stepped on it. His life changed a lot after he met Daniella. At first they shook hands and soon after. Before heading out, he even hugged Asagi, which was an unexpected move. A passionate friendship had formed between the men. After that, they lived happily ever after. Just when he thought everything was settled, Daniella asked Asagi if he also came from another world like the hero did. The time finally arrived, just as he was about to reveal his life's biggest secret. He chose not to make a fuss after that. He revealed he was actually from another world. Her handling of it was completely unexpected. While she discussed their next quest, Asagi was surprised she didn't show the expression he expected. Daniella asked whether the man wanted to say anything more. That was a furious response. The man said that although he still wanted to tell her, she showed no interest, and he explained that he had not been able to find the right time to bring it up. He arrived to say the world he left had no magic, only fundamental science. Although she found it amazing, she suggested heading to the next empire, which came across as poor phrasing and a weak explanation. She explained to him that people from other worlds actually lived there, so it was not strange. Learning he was from another world, even if he was a raccoon, did not change her expression or feelings, because she planned to be with him forever. This gave a different kind of reassurance, and they tried to hug each other. Trying to play the bigger role this time, the lady explained she couldn't stop herself because of his cuteness. Calling a man like him cute in the middle was a sign of respect, even though he was trembling then. They spent the whole day at the hotel, getting ready to leave the next day. They first went to the hotel owner to sign off, and although he was unhappy to let them go, letting guests leave was part of his life. He even invited them back to the Silver Sky if they ever returned. As they left, they found he was as kind as ever and always ready to help. As usual, they gathered all the groceries and food, including provisions for the trip. Before that, he went to the Western District Barracks. The captain was delighted to see him after a very long while, and he told him the complete plan. Who realized they would be unable to meet for a long time. He offered a handshake and invited him to visit the city anytime. This person confirmed he was passionate and helped them with everything, including arranging a hotel and supplying equipment. Their goodbye was not forever, but it still felt sad and was part of their life. Their next stop was the Adventurer Guild, where they first met the guild receptionist, who already knew this time was coming. This time even the guild master came to visit them before they left. The master was there. The receptionist pretended she already knew every detail of Asagi's plan. She tried to make it sound scary. When Asagi saw the receptionist's face, he realized sadness still lingered in the air. The guild master asked where they planned to go next. By that time, they had not made a clear decision and remained uncertain about moving to the Southern Empire. The master decided to tell the Guild Empire about them, but they both refused. Before leaving, the guildmaster warned them to be careful, as this town was extremely hardy. Their goal was to travel from the start. They promised the receptionist they would definitely return one day. The receptionist was sending them off, but their connection wasn't very good. They decided to walk it off. The receptionist still disapproved of their relationship. She resented both of them for letting her out, but Asagi kept in touch by writing letters, and they agreed to stay friends forever. He believed that no matter where they went or how far apart they were, the goodbye was only temporary. After their cheerful conversation, they had a drink at the same restaurant as planned. While midway through their drinks, Rex arrived and Pyrrha was there too, so they kept partying all night. At last the day came when they had to say goodbye to the city. They discussed the empire they were heading to next, and Daniella clarified that it ruled a vast area to the south, and then decided to tell him that the city was in the Republic. Asagi had never heard of it to begin with. He knew only that a forest lay to the north and mountains to the south, the forest called the Grand Sawyer and the mountain called Mount Alisa. Daniella said the area around the mountain was called the Election Mountain Range, which ran east to west and marked the border between two kingdoms. She said the only route between the two countries was over the mountain. They would go to the empire through the city of Alisa. Too much information wiped out Asagi's mental map. Despite his best efforts to form an image, no clear picture appeared for him to understand. The city they were heading to then was considered a military nut. It was a source of pride, but they did not want to start any wars. Everyone knew they hated war because 600 years ago, the empire fought to conquer the world and succeeded. The world was too big for one nation to rule, and the emperor died from overwork. The next emperor, fearing the same fate, decided against any expansion. Asagi noticed the man was impressive, and Daniella knew they still had to find out who supported them. Asagi relaxed, knowing the nation did not concern him now that the sun was about to set. They pitched the tent while Asagi prepared the meal as usual. While the dinner was getting ready, Danielle. She was wiping herself off inside the tent. Asagi pictured her in compromising positions, but later that thought was wiped out. After that, both of them had their dinner. And being completely full, the woman just fell backward into the tent. After they were told that eating and lying down made them fat, Danielle worried her balloons would get bigger. Lately, she had become more seductive. They are enjoying their journey and making steady progress. The next day, they were on the move again. Asagi remembered the night before. Playing with her balloons, the girl stunned Asagi and left him shocked. He had to clarify that he meant she would gain weight. Being in that position was the last thing she wanted. She immediately asked him to start the discussions earlier. The man then toyed with her cheeks as if she were a little lady. It took him a while to get her mood back to normal, and he kept at it. Although it was a lot, it felt peaceful and pleasant to him. In addition, monsters called grass rabbits attacked them. A stone lizard then ambushed them with magic. During their expedition, they encountered goblins armed with crude stone weapons. They dealt with the goblins by cutting off their heads. These beginner-level monsters were no match for them now. They spent 3 days that way and soon drew closer to the mountain. Smokestacks rose from the valley. Danielle said they were from the town she was talking about and that they would reach the city that day. In that instant, his greatest fear was coming closer because, whenever he reached a town like that, he was immediately swept up into some wild trouble. Glancing around, he decided not to strain himself, but checked the air for anything waiting for him. Daniel found the man hard to read, and Asagi kept his guard up, aware trouble could come from anywhere and refusing to lower his defenses. His detection magic told him something was behind him, so he drew his sword and turned to face the enemy. He was a little more concerned than he usually needed to be. This time it was only a wagon coming around. A flag on the carriage made it clear they were not monsters. He labeled them bandits, but Daniella immediately rejected that idea. Moreover, when she saw the flight, she immediately recognized the coachman. It was the same shopkeeper who sold him all the material. The shopkeeper stopped the wagon as it drew near him, recognizing his wind dragon armor. Then he asked why he had raised his sword against him in the middle of nowhere. They sat in the wagon, riding side by side for the first time in a long while. Introducing himself as Nick, he said he was happy to meet him after so long. He had come to deliver cloths to the middle city. As a mining town, it needed a lot of cloth, so he was bringing sample pieces made from scrap. Asagi asked about the woman who looked after the shop while he was away, and he remembered her as his own wife. They used 2 different names, depending on the situation. They used a paw shape on their merchandise, but his next wife denied it every time. Sitting inside, both eyes somehow felt the pleasant atmosphere around them, and asked Nick to stop the carriage immediately. They looked up to see what monster was approaching them this time. Asagi believed it was not dangerous and felt happy that the crystal he was wearing could protect him. They discovered giant bird monsters, eagles that nested on cliffs. The moment Daniella drew her arrows and aimed at them, Asagi helped her by making some ice ones for them. The moment one of them was felled by a single strike. A different kind of dodge. All eyes were fixed on the two of them, trying to stop their escape. Daniella shot faster. A single strike near that monster's heart was enough to take it down. The fall made a real mess, so it would be hard for them to find any proof, but that might not matter because the mining town was just around the corner. Daniella stepped carefully up to the monster's corpse to take the largest eagle feather. That proved it had been subjugated. However, they could hardly get anything from this one because it was already tarnished. They left everything behind and headed for the city's main gate, where the soldiers immediately stopped them to make introductions. Nick introduced himself and explained why he was delivering the goods. Meanwhile, the others introduced themselves as adventurers. The soldier wanted to inspect the luggage. Although everything appeared to be in order, he gently welcomed them into the city and invited them to enjoy their time there. Asagi couldn't stop staring when the gate opened. To regain his attention, the woman began to play with his butt. Once inside, Nick went off on his own to finish his task. Then someone ran off with the carriage. This time they entered normally, without a hotel already arranged, and went in to ask what would be good for them to eat that day. That day, as soon as he entered one of the bar shops, he noticed an awkwardly dressed woman acting like a moralist, which was common in the city. At that moment, he continued staring at her and the shape. Daniella noticed it and touched his butt again to keep him alert. This guy sat down and took his time with lunch. As he passed the woman, she stopped him, offering a drink beside her that didn't really look like just a drink because she was. He made sure the guy wouldn't regret the distraction. Worse, he felt scared knowing Daniella would definitely not like it this time. When even the most immoral people looked at it, Daniella found everything the man said was true. Realizing the girl was only doing her job, she turned around. But it was already a clear enough signal for immoral people to play along with her boyfriend. Daniella's intense aura was enough to scare the boy away. He immediately jumped over to his girlfriend and sat beside her while FFFF. He could have any toast he wanted. To lift her spirits, he toasted the beauty of that lady. Embarrassment washed over Danielle when that statement came out of nowhere. Asagi paid no more attention and kept drinking the wine. Daniella asked the bartender about a hotel where the man could stay, and he suggested they stay there. It served as both a hotel and a bar. Each day's stay cost 3 silver coins. Considering this was the right price, Asagi agreed as he ate the snack, a real one this time. The master handed them 2 keys and the signing room number. Number 3 is on the 3rd floor, and number 4 is on the 4th floor for women. They had already planned for bait at the western cliff, which was far better. After a brief rest, the party set out immediately. That sounded like a good plan, so they agreed to meet back at the place in 10 minutes. When they returned, Asagi walked beside him carrying a bag. He clarified that public order seemed bad and said he was relieved to bring and freeze his bag of clothes after the trip, and Daniella told him the room had an anti-theft magic tool to protect their belongings. Anyone entering the room without a key would trigger it and be trapped. Asagi thought it was unfair that he had to carry the pouch when one was already there. While they reached their best, assuming Daniella had already reached the women's bath, he stepped inside to shake off his fatigue and undressed. He found the hot bath thick with steam and to be careful and move slowly. He washed his whole body with the towel. Then he steamed into the hot water, unable to see anything. He wondered if these were the same famous caves while he rested. Daniella could always blow the steam away with her magic, he remembered. Suddenly someone answered, shocking Asagi even more. When the steam finally cleared, he saw the woman sitting beside him, playing with it. The building had 2 entrances to keep the changing rooms separate. None of it made sense, and whatever the circumstances, Asagi felt embarrassed. He was happy that this would let him fulfill his strange fantasy, and both were soaking in the bath. Asagi decided to enjoy it to the fullest. On closer inspection, he saw the object was much deeper inside, but I couldn't see any waterfall or anything. At first, a splashing sound suggested there was a magnificent waterfall somewhere nearby. Then he reconfirmed with Daniella whether it was there, and she acted like she was not aware of it. While she toyed with her hair, he could tell from her expression that she was hiding something. He decided not to tell anyone, even if she told him. With no real choice, she realized she was very happy after seeing the spring. Feeling a bit daring, she was walking when the hot springs suddenly appeared, causing her to panic and fall into it like a pebble. He was laughing quietly inside, but he could not laugh out loud because he would not get lucky that night. The woman from the bar was also at Bates. A FFFF sound followed, finding the two lowest values for the day. Although the water they were soaked in was very hot, Asadi felt his lower body freezing. On top of that, Daniella did not find that presence consoling. The woman said Bate actually belonged to their bar and worked there. The bar was worth more than Asagi had imagined because it was big enough to buy the spring. That immoral woman was playing along with Asagi too much, trying to show him the moves she knew. While Asagi blushed and pretended he wasn't interested in seeing her. From behind, Danielle felt a powerful, deadly aura that was menacing. She stood up in the middle of the bath, upset that the woman had touched her boyfriend. She couldn't handle it, especially since it came from one of the top adventurers. Even though she tried to clarify her position, Daniella did not want to listen to any of it, but she had no choice. The woman just apologized and clarified. She promised she would not do anything like that again, and Asagi calmed her, saying it was part of her job. Daniella didn't find it appealing at all that the woman was flirting with her boyfriend. He mistakenly blamed himself for not being firm enough and calmed down. Things were starting to go well. The woman at the bar got carried away. Feeling happy, she gave him a warm hug. As she burst her balloons on Asagi's face, the man had just lost everything. Next time Asagi opened his eyes, he couldn't understand what had really happened because he was in his room. He realized he had passed out after the woman hugged him. His head hurt because it may have hit something. Unable to rest, he decided to go for a walk. Then the master was found. Someone told him the key opened both the main door and his room, so he could use it. He added that it wouldn't work on others, so it would be useless. Stepping outside, he lit a fire at one of the fire chems. As he sat above, he found the place had tall buildings. This made planning very important. Someone came up from behind and startled the Sagi. One adventurer stood there, holding a mining tool in his hand. Asadi was immediately recognized as a human from his first town and as one of its early small-time thugs. This guy was sent to work in the mines, and he was furious to be suffering because of him. Angry, the man was about to kill Asagi. They tried to attack him with the tool while he was moving at high speed. Trying to avoid it, he dodged every move the thug made. Not wanting to fight him in the middle of the night, he walked away. He decided to report this to the guard station. "I'm thinking of letting it rest." Then they went back into the hotel. As soon as he opened it, no one was there, which meant the master had already been arrested. He noticed the woman from earlier was still awake, and the way Asaj. Calling her had a seductive quality. He immediately asked where the city guard station was because some sleeves were chasing him. She clarified that it was down the street, and after taking the third right he would find it. Asadi stepped out to tell the guard that thugs were still there to attack him. He knew he could not walk away without fighting them. He immediately drew his ice sword. It shocked them. Now they decided to act together to take him down. While fighting one, another tried to find a gap and attacked from that side. The woman from before with large balloons stepped forward and pushed that person away with a single strike. Saving Asadi from a close call, the strongest of them resented the interference and swung his weapon at her again. Asagi immediately used the forest wolf's legs. He intervened in the attack and saved her, and cut it off with a single strike. Meanwhile, the lady felt relieved. The others were shocked and angry at his strength, and without waiting even a second, Asagi then pushed the woman aside in the hotel. This would keep her out of trouble. When the gate locked, Asagi was relieved that the anti-theft magic would burn anyone who tried to barge in. He was more than just angry with those guys. They tried to bring an outsider into the fight with him, but they simply outnumbered him. If you truly couldn't do anything, Asadi was furious. He immediately delivered a powerful kick. He brought it to their legs and cut it with a single strike. A man lay on the ground, crying and clutching his legs. The other tried to attack. He met the same fate, ending up on the ground screaming. The third one was very thin. Realizing he couldn't do anything, he decided to walk away. Asagi never allowed anything like this. There he inflicted the pain he deserved for interfering and bringing an outsider into the bath. With only the final target remaining, Asagi turned to find him. He noticed, however, that it had already run away. On the other side, the person was doing his best to climb the stairs. At the top, he gripped his sword, using it because of his fault and what he did. Saji came up behind him without a sound, stepped in, and pointed out his mistake, telling him he was the one who had first tried to hurt Daniella. That thought simply wouldn't go away. Asadi kicked away the weapon of that near thought with his leg, then caught him in midair at the end, while leaving him with only a few upper floors of the building. The man tried to teach him that everything would have been fine if he had not interfered and gone to the mines, even though Asagi was apologizing for what he had done. He wasn't ready to let it go. He immediately threw him to the floor. He could only scream in absolute terror as he fell. Asagi changed his stance immediately and had no interest in killing him. So he jumped faster than him by using his legs. Before that thing hit the ground, kicked it up into the air, and he made a cushion so it would not be fatal to him. He survived but suffered serious injuries. This would take him more time to recover. They tied up all three thugs and left them in the middle. Asagi enjoyed the pale blue, dim morning, sitting on the corner waiting for the guards to arrive. People passing by listened as Asagi told the full, true story of what happened. One soldier arrived, confirming whether the man was actually hurt and checking that he is okay. Because the garment needed more detail, he decided to walk with him to the station. The woman from earlier who had some big balloons was introduced as Lisa. Asagi told them the woman was staying at the same hotel as he was. Even Lisa was on her way to the station now. Asagi asked to be treated gently. The guard asked him to bring the companion who was staying alone at the hotel. At the station that call, the captain introduced himself and asked the other person's name, who had been an adventurer when the citizen Ri. He realized the man had been attacked and was glad they acted quickly. She explained in detail that they had once been adventurers in a town and caused trouble, so he asked the guard to send them to the mines. Both of the captain's guards were actually cousins, so that was a good place to start the conversation as relatives. Asagi thanked his cousin for helping him with most of the problems. The fake family act worked, and now the captain looked at him like he was his brother. Then he set him free. He then asked what he really intended to do with the sleeves he had captured. The guard wanted to know whether he planned to increase their sentence or he could have them executed in accordance with the law, and his authority superseded the SLEP bureaus. The captain said he would have them hanged if Asagi wanted that, and the way he spoke reminded Asagi of his cousin, who had asked the same after capturing them. So Asagi was about to answer when Augard intervened to announce the companion's arrival. Daniella arrived, worried about her boyfriend and checking that he was okay. Asagi acted as if nothing had happened and said so, while the woman looked more concerned about him. They were glad that everything was fine. She panicked when she learned some thugs had taken him. Although she knew how strong he was, her love made her worried. They shared a very romantic moment, gazing into each other's eyes. They were just about to kiss when the captain coughed to remind them that they weren't at their hotel, they were at the station. They clearly could not live without each other. Then he asked again what punishment he would give the slaves. Hearing that, Asagi replied optimistically. He called the people from the capital in charge of the sleeves a bunch of scum. Unlike the guards, Asagi let her intervene in the decision he was about to make. She left the decision entirely in his hands. After much thought, he finally He told the captain he wanted the sleeves' sentences lengthened. He wanted to believe people could change as long as they were alive. That was a bold statement. The captain realized he was a kind person and was sure even the sleeves would see through it. After leaving the station, he found Lisa was also coming out of another door. She was at it again, acting clingy. She was more worried about that guy than anything when the thugs attacked, clinging to him while Asagi tried to run away. She doubted that this man loved her. Daniella came up behind them again, stopped their fun, and asked Asagi what his intentions were. Asagi trembled with fear while Daniella remained silent and kept talking nonstop about what he had actually done. Caught between Daniella and Lisa, he had only a short while before the captain came to his rescue. He returned to the master and handed back the keys. Even though it was only a one-day stay, this had been much better. He got to know Lisa pretty well, and as they were leaving he checked again that he had thought about the woman's final remark. Lisa actually invited Asagi along to come have fun in town. She made clear she swung to both sides, and the statement was very intimidating. They planned to exit the gate and continue their journey. Nick recognized them in the middle of the street and He was glad those men had taken care of some slaves again. Asagi said he neutralized them in self-defense, but it was the same thing again. Since they were already leaving town, the merchant asked Desadi to spread the word about his clothes and armor everywhere. Soldiers showed them the final gate they could use to exit. Asaj remembered that when they entered, it was quite large. The captain planned it all to flaunt his power. That Sod could remember his drink face.